Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Friday, y'all. I hope you guys are doing well. Excited to be back on the channel. We're going to be doing live astrology readings. Do me a favor, if you can see me, make sure you click the thumbs up below. Give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can see me. Let everybody else know that we are live on the channel. And it's going to be a full moon pretty soon, huh? Pretty soon. I'm trying to look at my calendar. It's coming up here in the next couple days. Full moon in Pisces, conjunct Saturn. So for most of you guys who are used to seeing my content, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. Those of you guys who are new, I'm a Western astrologer. I work both with tarot as well as, the Sabian symbols, looking at what's going on with the transits to assess what's going on in the cosmos. On Friday nights, we alternate and we go back and forth between doing live tarot or astrology readings. This week it's going to be astrology. If you'd like to get a reading, you can get in the queue and make a donation. We are requesting that everybody please sign up in advance because we've already got like a dozen people. There's a QR code right here. So if you're watching on your laptop or on a tablet, you can actually scan this with your phone. It'll take you right to my PayPal where you can make your donation of $55 US for a question, or we can do Sinistry for 70. For me to be able to assess your chart and look at your astrology. It's very, very important that you guys follow these directions. Please give me your at least your first name. If you want to be anonymous, let me know. I need your full date. So that's the day, month, year. Please spell it out because I'm an American, so we might have a different format than you. As well as the time and the city and the state that you were born. And then let me know what your question is. Please also, for the sake of time, we're going to be answering one question per person unless you want to make multiple donations, and be specific in terms of what you have a question about. Sometimes people have questions about how the full moon's going to impact them. Maybe they want to know about a nodal transit or just themes revolving around certain topics in your life. Or if you have a question about a certain aspect in your natal chart that you wondered about, I can answer that for you as well. I just want to say hello to everybody. Let me go through because I know you guys have been hanging out for a little bit. What's up, Stephanie? Hey, Maria, Jessica, Carla, Lika, welcome back. What's up, Davers? Anne's here, Marsha's here. We have got the whole Friday night crew. Thank you for all of your kind comments. What's up, Rachel, Laura, Celestial Raven? What's going on, guys? Carrie, Tonya. What's going on? Let me see. Have we done a reading for Tonya? No, and I think I probably have your info, right, Tonya? Let me look. I should. For those of you guys who are wondering, Tonya, can you just confirm your birth information? Is it 4/15/68? Let me know. I have memberships on my channel, so if you like my content, make sure you're subscribed, but also consider joining my memberships. If you join my memberships, there's 3 different levels. You guys can donate to help me continue being a full-time content creator. We've got videos coming out pretty much every other day or so. Sundays we're doing astro weather. We've got astro musings during the week. Live horoscopes for September are now out for you guys, and obviously new full moon reports, all that fun stuff. But yeah, if you're a level 3 member, you basically get a reoccurring monthly reading. Our level 3 members we take first, so we've got a list of people that we kind of go through there, but Tonya, I will add you to my list. All right, so let me give you guys a bit of a roll call so you have an idea of who I've got, how many people I've got. And as always, thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. Okay, cool. Wanted to make sure that's you. I'll add you to my list, Tonya. All right, so here's who I've got for the readings for this evening. We're going to start by taking our level 3 people. So Jessica, Lika, Tonya, we'll get you guys first. Then in this order, I've got Jeremy, Matt, we've got an anonymous person, Maria, Carla, Catherine, Alana, Rachel, and Eula. Am I saying that correctly? Eula? It's a pretty name. If I'm saying this correctly, let me know. That's who I've got. So we've got about a dozen or so people who are already in the queue. If you guys make your donation, just let me know. We also take super chat. Usually every couple readings or so, I will update you guys and call out a couple names and let you know who's coming up next. So if you're just signing on and you're like, I want to get a reading, it's going to be like an hour-ish. So just a heads up. Usually we're here for about 2, maybe 3 hours. It just depends. Let's see, what else? I think that's pretty much it. Just a few other notes about some stuff going on in the channel. Aside from the fact that we have horoscopes out, there's all kinds of new stuff on my website. So I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm offering now digital downloads where you can get a full rolling 12 months of transits. Personal transits, which is uploaded into a calendar file. So if you use Google Calendar, if you use your Apple iCalendar for your desktop computer, for your cell phone, if you use it with an iPhone, you can now purchase a 12-month personalized report. So you get the file, you download it right into your phone or your online calendar, and you're gonna have all of the transits for the year that are the most significant. Usually it's around anywhere between like 75 and maybe 100. Which is really cool because it's personalized. So if you guys have already seen the other calendars that I have, the printed calendars, the digital calendars, those are more general. We are working on the next one, so we're working on 2024. So we hope to have that out here right around the holiday season for you guys. There's all kinds of new stuff that's going to be coming out on my website. So we've got like candles now. We've got this new calendar report. We're going to be having all kinds of new products. So if you're ever interested in checking out my courses or my products, check out my website below. It's in the description at beyondtheveiltarot.com. You can also book a personalized one-on-one reading with me. And we'll link that stuff. Shameless plug. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll get right into it. We're going to start with Jessica, Lika, and then Tonya. And then we'll pop into our other readings. We'll leave it up for maybe about 30 minutes. So if you guys want to pop on there, we'll give it about 20-30 minutes for you guys to pop in. All right, so we've got Jessica. All right, so you are February 5th, 1990, 1:38 a.m., El Paso. So Jessica says, what's coming towards me with career finances? Thanks, I will not be on the reading live. No worries. All right, so Jessica's a Scorpio rising. Those of you guys who are kind of new to looking at my channel, we always take the natal chart, we put the transits on the outer wheel. So if you guys see everything that's going on here, oh, that's fancy, that's new. That is going to be the current transits, okay? So she's a Scorpio rising, Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Gemini. Money is always going to be second house, okay? So she's obviously very focused on productivity, right? Look at that second house stellium that she's got with all that Capricorn. And then career is going to be more 10th house, okay? So this is Virgo for her, and then Sagittarius is her second house. And I am a Placidus user, so I like to use Placidus. That's how I like to do it. And so she's asking about career and resources. So Jupiter is going to be more about money for her. And so we see that Saturn is kind of like in this long, kind of off and on trine to Jupiter all year. Okay, so trines are obviously positive, harmonious. It looks like Jupiter's receiving trines from Saturn at the bottom part of your chart. So there's a lot of like focusing on, you know, how am I getting situated at home? Where am I living? How productive am I? Because Saturn can be relating to work when it comes to what I'm doing on the home front, where I'm living. It can also be about, doing work at home. It can, especially for Scorpio risings, I know that you're a late degree, but this can also be about like doing some kind of creative work from home because, you know, traditionally Pisces is the whole sign 5th. But it is around your Placidus IC. And so something I would say about, you know, Saturn being at the bottom part of your chart, it kind of feels like you're throwing an anchor overboard. A lot of late degree Scorpio risings and Sag risings also have been talking about how Saturn being there kind of feels heavy. It's like you're stuck, you can't really get out, you can't do much. There's a lot of responsibility revolving around a property, a parent, a home situation. Pisces is prison, so I've definitely heard a number of times Scorpio risings talking about how it feels kind of like being stuck in prison at home. Hopefully you're doing something creative with this transit. Naturally, when Saturn is at the bottom part of the chart, it is at the lowest point. So the good news is there's nowhere else to go but up. So when Saturn is here, it's looking up at the top part of the chart. We call this the MC. This is the midheaven. You got action going on right now around the IC, home, family, private life, and the MC out in the world, you know, your productivity, your career. And we're going to see retrogrades around both of those. So intuitively, it makes me feel like there's a lot of reevaluating. How do I feel? How can I communicate better as Saturn retrogrades into your third house? Do I need to move? Is there a change in terms of how I'm learning, how I'm communicating with people? And that trine to Jupiter is actually opening up your resources the more that you're getting either emotionally or physically kind of better situated, okay? A lot of Scorpio risings also with like Pluto going in and out of your whole sign third has been a lot of learning new techniques or like learning new software or new ways to be able to kind of revamp business, right? Capricorn. When it comes to like online or websites or media, so that's been something that you guys have been working on. So that trine from Saturn, which stabilizes, to Jupiter in Cancer all year is really positive. It's just saying more resources are going to come from doing the work internally or at home. Now, two, the other way to look at this is that when it comes to your career, it's ruled by Mercury. Who here has been assaulted by the Mercury retrograde already? So Mercury is going retrograde in your career zone right now, and that's going to be for the next 3 weeks. So it means that on a mental level, you're reevaluating and rethinking, how can I be best of service out in the world, right? 10th house. What am I here to do? How can I reorganize, rethink, rework, reconfigure what my purpose is, Virgo, and you know how I'm able to kind of renegotiate maybe things in regards to my career, 10th house. This is all happening while there's like a sun opposed Saturn and while there's like all this other stuff at the top part of the chart. So to be honest with you, like when the sun, Mercury, and Mars moves through your 10th house, you're busy. But I'm watching it all come into these oppositions with Saturn and Neptune. So there's a lot of what am I sacrificing? What am I giving up? You know, work is really productive. There's a lot going on, but at what cost? Emotionally or in terms of not always being as engaged as you could with your living situation or your roommates or your family, what have you. Because Mercury rules your career, it's interesting because you're also seeing that this Mercury retrograde is trining your natal Mercury and your Venus conjunction. So if you think back, right, think back to like April, May, we had a Mercury retrograde in Taurus, and for you it was a lot of like, how can I reorganize things and my schedule and my timing? Now you've got one that's happening in your 10th house, which is about, you know, what changes you're making in terms of your status or your career. Those trines are kind of funneling positive energy into your second house. So it's allowing you to kind of really take stock in, what do I value? How do I want to make money? How can I be most productive? And like, how can that manifest to bringing in more resources? So I like the retrograde for you personally. The trines that it's forming to Jupiter is really saying getting on track, being consistent, having a routine. And also there's a lot of work for Scorpio risings. You're a late one, but you know, I think of the eclipses in Aries, which is picking up off your 6th house. Anyway, this retrograde and the next retrograde are going to be pretty prominent because you're going to see your 10th house ruler going retrograde here and also here. And that'll be in mid-December. Now, when do we see like wealth really show up? When you see like maybe Jupiter trine Mercury, when we see, which you're going to have actually, you're going to have that more so in the spring. I just feel like right now it's a lot of reconfiguring, you know, is the way that I'm working for me, and how is it going to help me kind of bring in the resources that I need? I encourage you, while Mars is there as well, you've got about another day or two of Mars being in your 10th house. Well, maybe a little bit longer actually, I take that back. Let's say about a week, but it's going to go into Libra. That this is also like giving you a lot of action and motivation revolving around going and getting work done. So whether that's like applying for jobs, putting work out there, meeting with people, you know, the list goes on. It's going to be a very busy time. But I think next year, as we start seeing, you know, Jupiter coming into a trine with your Saturn and Jupiter coming into a trine with your Venus, you're going to see like March, April, May 2024. That's when the real stability is really going to kind of show up. There is still that Mercury retrograde in December that you're going to have to kind of work with when it comes to, you know, reworking something about your spending habits or your resources. But right now, it's a very powerful period for trying to figure out where you are supposed to be applying yourself the most, what is and is not working for you. And I'm loving all of the trines, not just between your natal Mercury, but also Jupiter. So really staying consistent and being on top of your routine is what's going to end up bringing in the resources, leading you to getting the end of the year. Things are going to stabilize even more. And then you're really going to see the full effects of all of this kind of blossoming, I think, the spring of next year. Outer planets are what you really want to be looking at. And you're going to have Saturn that's also going to be sextiling your Mercury, and Jupiter, which will eventually go into your whole sign 8th, where you're going to have, more access to other people's money, getting ready to come into your Jupiter return. So it's all built off of this year where you're doing just a lot of consistently grinding it out, and staying on top of your physical routine. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight for what's coming, and look for mid-December maybe to be a turning point where possibly you're going to start to see that's when more resources start to come in, depending on how you utilize them, because it might be also about, okay, more money's coming in, how am I holding back on the spending? A Mercury retrograde in the second house can do that. Thank you for being a level 3 supporter. I appreciate it. All right, so we have got now Lika. So let's pull Lika up. Let's see, what did she say? What's up, Lika? She said, I'm reposting because I think it was deleted. I want a reading, no question. Couldn't come up with one, but if you want, you can focus on romantic relationship or career trajectory. Romantic relationship concerning someone I've been back and forth with for 23 years. He's a Taurus sun, Cat moon, not sure rising. He's Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Virgo. Hope this is helpful for the reading, but a lot of back and forth with us, and I don't know, kind of wondering where it leads, so maybe that's my question. He may be at Cap rising. I'll catch it later, headed to my son's first football game of the season. Well, hopefully he does well. Thanks for your question, Lika. So Lika didn't have a question in particular. She kind of left it up to me, but I think it's very interesting that she mentioned that there's been a lot of back and forth in a relationship. She's a Pisces rising, sun in Gemini, and her moon is in Sagittarius. So she was actually born just before, just after a full moon in Sagittarius, okay? Because she's got sun in Sag, she's got moon in Gemini. So she's got all this mutable. So something I noticed about this Lika basically is the fact that you have Saturn that's sitting in conjunction to your ascendant this year. And so, Saturn will move through that part of your chart once every 28, 29 years. And that is kind of like a defining moment for who am I? What are my goals? How am I showing up for myself? What is the vision that I had for myself, right, Pisces? And what are my boundaries? Where am I holding myself back, right? And also, where am I not really showing up too much for myself? Where am I not having clear vision? Where am I, kind of allowing people to have too much of a say in things? Kind of like interesting to have Saturn, which represents maturity and commitment and timing, and also Neptune, which is kind of the opposite. It's more kind of free-flowing and intuitive and sensitive, but it can also be kind of like self-undoing in your first house. So you may feel like you're kind of like oscillating and going back and forth between, there are periods of time where you're really committed and very dedicated to what you're doing and your vision and what you need, and you're very clear about it. And then there are periods where you're like, oh, I don't care anymore, or I don't even know what's happening. I'm not going to try to push stuff. And that's kind of the back and forth that you have with Saturn and Neptune. This is challenging also because it's Saturn that is in a mutable grand cross basically with all of your planets. So you've got these early degrees Gemini, you've got these early degrees Sag, and now you've got Virgo season, right? Sun comes into your 7th house, Mercury's retrograding in your 7th house of relationships. We're going to see a 3-week period of Mercury doing its thing, a lot of back and forth with somebody else. Believe it or not, Virgo, in the 7th house can deal a lot with like somebody else's problems, especially being a Pisces rising, somebody else's problems, their job issues, their health issues, their hang-ups, their, need to kind of get their own things in order. And so a retrograde there can be seen almost like the equivalent of like a retrograde in the 1st house for you. So you want to think about how the 7th house is their body, their actions, their communication. It's going to feel a little wonky with Mercury retrograde.
And retrogrades represent reversals or reevaluations or returning to things or reworking things. I realized, I was thinking about it this week, when I did my Mercury retrograde video, I didn't really talk about how we had this Mercury retrograde last year. And I was kind of kicking myself because if I'm correct, I believe that the retrograde actually started in Libra and I think it retrograded back into Virgo. If anybody remembers, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll check in a second. But basically, you guys want to think about what was happening like fall of 2022. Very similar Mercury retrograde. So it's possible that, you say, well, we've been back and forth for like 20 something years, but you might have been doing the back and forth a little bit even last fall, being like, okay, which way is it going to fall? A little different now that Saturn's here. So while Saturn is anywhere between like, let's say 0 and 10 degrees, it's lighting your chart up like a Christmas tree. And especially the next couple of days, that's going to be really highlighted as the sun moves into an opposition with Saturn, which means you might see a situation where somebody's being more self-focused. There's a lot of action relationships Sun in the 7th, but there's also a lot of them doing their own thing and reworking something and going through a period of maybe not communicating with you very effectively. The opposition to Saturn is you looking at this being like, well, can I rely on them? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Do I have higher standards now? And then the square that it's doing to the other mutable planets just kind of feels like a huge confusing cloud that's going to kind of hang around for about a couple weeks. The good news is, one, when you have these grand crosses in your angular houses, at the very least, change happens, right? Like I can think of the times in my life where I've had Mercury retrograde or a outer planet retrograde on my angular houses, and it's a lot when you're in it, but it's helpful because it puts pressure on your career, on you, and on your home life, which makes the wheel turn, so change happens. So a lot of this change is actually stemming from and coming from your partners right now. It's like, are they ready, right? Because Saturn in your first house is your standards, your expectations, your goals for yourself. It's about really staying true to that and not backing down and not making personal sacrifices unless you have to. Saturn is also going to go direct on your ascendant. You're going to see that later this year, which I think is also going to be very illuminating. But the next 3 months, a little hazy. The next 3 weeks are going to be a little hazy. I would encourage you to work with Mercury retrograde in your 7th and the trines that it's actually making to Jupiter. So Jupiter is actually hanging out right now, conjunct your natal Mercury, which means like there's a lot of opportunity for communicating. It can be positive. It can be about what's the future hold, where are we going in Taurus, where we're living, how we're spending money, what are we building, what are we, creating together. Technically, this is in the 3rd house. So I'm wondering, are there things kind of like, are we moving in together? What are we doing? Are we talking about the future of where we're going to be in the next year? Because I think about Jupiter going into your 4th house next year, and it's going to square, still off with Saturn slightly, and your descendant, and it's going to oppose your moon. And as Jupiter kind of hangs out, Jupiter's your traditional ruler in the 4th, you're going to want to spend more time at home, right? And so it's still going to be kind of in a bit of like a landlock with Saturn and also with Neptune. And Gemini in the 4th house can represent going back and forth, relocating, traveling, going back and forth between 2 places. Having a lot of energy in your 3rd house, I think you're used to that. But I wonder if with Saturn on your ascendant is you being like, I want to know what to rely on. I want something that's better grounded. That's just kind of the feeling that I'm getting. And with Jupiter and Uranus in conjunction to Mercury, I feel like you guys can talk about traveling more next year, moving in together, maybe buying a vehicle. Things like that can start kind of coming up, and talking about physical ways, Taurus, that you can be building towards the future. Anyway, I like the retrograde because I feel like there are several periods where you will see Mercury trine Jupiter. It's been happening this last week. It's going to happen again here in a couple days, and then it'll happen one more time on the back end. So you want to give this until about the end of September and work with those trines to be able to talk positively about the future. Until you have, let's say, Venus go into the 7th house and oppose Saturn, I could see there being a situation where you're kind of like fed up because there's a bit of back and forth for a little while. And then finally, when Venus comes into opposition with Saturn, this person's like, okay, I'm ready to come around. I'm not being difficult. Let's do this. Let's talk about it, whatever. And then you're like, no, it's too little too late. And if this game or like this kind of not getting clarity goes on until about mid-October, For a lot of people, I've said that the Venus-Saturn opposition will materialize as finally ripping off the Band-Aid. So you want to be watching around like the 11th through the 15th. That may be like a turning point when Venus moves into Virgo, where she's not happy, opposes Saturn, where you're going to be like, I need more than what you're giving me, and then it's going to square all of your stuff. Now you're going to hear as a Gemini that it's moving through your 4th house, which represents the past and ends of situations or home. So I'm wondering if what's kind of happening is there's this storyline that's brewing where there's a lot of like maybe feeling like you're getting to a certain turning point and you're like, what are we doing in terms of the living situation? Are we moving forward or not? Or could we see ourselves doing that in the future? All peppered in also with Mars crossing the opposition to the eclipse point. You're one of those people who were born in the early 80s, and so you guys are getting hit pretty hard with that solar eclipse in Aries that we had in April. So Mars reactivating that is probably going to bring up themes revolving around intimacy, security. What are we building? How are we moving forward together? Are we ready? Are we not? Are you scared? Okay, if you're scared, you know, is it going to be you kind of snapping back and being like, this is not good enough? Now, the good news is that next year, Jupiter is going to conjunct Mercury. So that's pretty positive because in theory, you're Jupiter and Mercury is another person. So it does indicate that there is like future positivity on the horizons with a relationship, but your chart kind of reads as if like it's getting to that turning point where the next couple of months between now and let's say October is a lot of like, are we doing this or not? And I also think a lot of that's the turning point of transit Pluto that's also coming into a square with your Libra placements. So for a lot of you guys, it's kind of being like, okay, are we moving out of like this past, you know, trauma drama, you know, Pluto, Saturn in relationships and moving further into the future? And are we on the same page in terms of our goals, 11th house? I think there's a lot to look forward to personally, especially going into next year when Jupiter fully conjuncts your Mercury, and it could very well be that these things do emerge and you do evolve in the relationship. However, it's also going to be, I think, after a series of some really kind of like heart-to-heart conversations that you're going to have, because Saturn is squaring your Sun and Mars in the 3rd. So it's about having conversations with men. And it's not unusual when you have, you know, Saturn square the Sun. There can be some challenges with male figures in your life. I would work with the Mercury retrograde. Generally, I see relationships end more so in the 6th house personally. And that is technically Cancer. So you may wait until you see the full moon in Cancer that happens in Capricorn season. Another time is going to be when Mercury retrogrades over your moon, and it will be in conjunction with Mars. And I wonder if this is also going to be like a turning point where if it's like, okay, are we having a definitive decision about the status? You know, are we doing this or not? Right around the end of December. So I would be looking around that time is where right when you get to the end of the year, I think you're going to have a better understanding of whether or not, you know, you guys are going to move forward. And also you want to take into consideration also this, like your guys' Sinistry and your composite. You know, a lot of people ask me the difference between that. Sinistry is when you put somebody's chart information over yours and then you see how the two charts interact. It's kind of like, you know, observing two people in a room, or you go to a bar and you watch somebody kind of talk to each other or have dinner, right? You see kind of the chemistry and how they are. The composite chart, though, you can use the midpoint method where you take the midpoint between the two charts. Super nerdy, but amazing for being able to understand relationships and make predictions in relationships. You can also use the Davidson, which is going to take the midpoint of the date and the location, create a composite chart, and you can use that to predict as well. In my opinion, good astrologers should be looking at both. So that's something else you can consider, especially if you've invested 20-something years into a relationship. You could say, hey, I would want to get a composite chart reading and like look at the chart and question whether or not this is something that is meant to move forward. I think that the chart in this case is very positive, though, once again, for next spring. Okay, so next spring, it's looking like there is a lot of opportunity to move forward, but it requires movement because Jupiter is going to conjunct Mercury in the 3rd, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Hopefully the game went well and you enjoyed it. All right, so we've got Tonya. Are there any other level 3 people here? Just wondering. And if you guys are just tuning in, you can scan the QR code below and you can get in the queue for a reading. We'll leave it open probably for like another 5 minutes or so. I'm all hyped up on Mountain Dew. Probably should not drink energy drinks and do readings, huh? All right, so who's next? Tonya. All right, Tonya, welcome back. Let's see, what was your question? And those of you guys who are asking, I'll run through who I've got in just a second, don't worry. Planning to set up an LLC biz and make it official. What is the best timing for that? If my eyes start twitching. I only drink these when I clean the house. But it's Virgo season and it's my 12th house, so all my bad habits come back. All right, so she's asking questions about starting a business. You're a Virgo rising, moon in Sag, sun in Aries. Oof. I like that the North Node is coming into conjunction with your sun and you're like, yes, let's start a business. So a couple of things. First of all, business for you is Mercury. Mercury's retrograde. So, and not that it's bad to be planning. I like to use retrogrades for planning, but you want to wait until like Mercury is direct. And also, I am not a huge fan of when Saturn is retrograde in trying to launch businesses. So we'll take a look at some of the transits. However, this retrograde for you, when it's done, okay, so let's move it, let's progress the chart forward to when it's direct in mid-September. We could do something like when Mercury is coming into maybe a trine with Uranus or Jupiter. So it could also, it may also potentially depend on the kind of business that you're going to be launching. So I wonder what that may be, if you want to share that with us at all. Let's see. So Mercury is going to be in Virgo. It's going to pick up a trine to Jupiter. And we're also going to have the sun that's going to trine the moon. So September 24th, Venus is going to still square Uranus. But still, I mean, you know, it depends on how long you're willing to like wait. If you're needing to do something sooner, certainly like closer to around the end of September isn't entirely too bad, because I like the sun and the moon trine. Oh, YouTube tarot. Okay. So tarot, astrology stuff, 5th house, right? Or Aquarius. So I like this. I like the moon in your 5th house trine the sun. I like Mercury in a trine to Jupiter because it can be about tarot stuff, whole sign 3rd. The Venus Uranus I'm not sure about. Another option is you can launch something after the new moon in your 3rd house. And that might be not too shabby because you're also going to have Mars there. Where's going to be Mercury? Mercury's in Sag. Okay. So another option is you can do something when the moon is in Cancer here around early November. Especially if you catch it early in the morning. So you've got moon in its ruling sign, the trine to the sun, which is in your 3rd house of monetization. Mars is there. Sextiles to Venus, which is conjunct Uranus. So this November 2nd is not too shabby. And also this is still kind of picking up a trine to Saturn. It's loose, but it's there. So November 2nd-ish. Venus, obviously, not crazy about having Venus in Virgo, but I think the trine to Uranus and the sextile to the 3rd is also good. Another option would be after the new moon in Scorpio, right around here, that trine to the 3rd house. I'm not crazy about Mercury and Sag and the square to Neptune, personally. but it does trine your Jupiter. So you got the end of November as well. And then I for one am waiting for some stuff in Capricorn season, because I want to hit an exalted Mars for some business stuff. So something else you may consider that plays really nicely with your chart is going to be like when Mercury's in Capricorn, Mars is in Capricorn, this is in your 5th house, and it's in a trine to your 1st. This will be right around mid-January. All 3 of those times are not entirely too bad, to be honest with you. The only thing I would say to take into consideration is you have planets in the 5th house squaring the nodes, and even if you start the business sooner, this will be a time where it's really reinforcing that you're actually doing it and like trying to drive home bringing in money and resources, 8th house from other people, but it's occult related. Okay? So those are 3 times between now and the new year that you can consider launching something. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, so are there any other level 3 people? Anybody else here? MV, did I get you? Did you want your reading? Let me know. Let me give you guys a running list of who I've got. I know that you guys are being really patient. I appreciate it. And we're going to do last call right now so you guys can get in now. Otherwise, we're going to close it down. All right, so I've got Jeremy, Matt, Anonymous, Maria, Carla, Catherine, Alana, Rachel, Eula, Anais, Julia, Frank, Vani, Amy, Kimberly. And then it looks like Eula got Sinistry. Okay, so don't worry. I got you guys. So we're going to do Jeremy, Matt, and Anonymous. You guys are all on deck. Let's see. And let's see, it looks like it was you and Steven. All right, so that looks like it was like a Sinistry. Oh, okay, it's already up and running. Then those are good dates. All right, so Jeremy says, Sinistry reading. My close friend Steven and I are moving in together to his hometown in Chicago. Currently, I'm living in Washington. We've been friends for 2 years. In that time, he has become a big part of my family. This will be the first time meeting his family and getting to see his world. He recently broke up with his boyfriend in July and is healing, and we're still friends, but have felt our connection deepening over the last month. Our energies always seem to harmonize when we're together. Hoping to gain some insight and guidance on what possibly to expect and how to best support each other as we enter this new chapter. So you're 11/16/94, 5:35 a.m. And they are 7/4/99 at 12:33 a.m. Okay. So a couple things. Obviously, just looking at your chart, Scorpio Sun, Scorpio Rising. You know, Uranus is kind of doing its thing right now in your 7th house. So there's lots of changes going on with like friendships, Uranus, and relationships. I feel inclined to tell you that you're kind of at a pivotal time right now with your astrology because Uranus is exactly in opposition to your sun and it's about to retrograde in this next week. So what's going to happen here with Uranus in opposition to your sun is that when it comes to you and your identity, 1st house, and them and their changes, 7th house, there are some relational things with the opposition that's like it could go this way or it could go that way. Okay, so you're going to deal with that opposition for like the next year. 23 degrees does deal with when things suddenly speed up or they change or there is some kind of breakthrough. So it's not unusual. I've seen a lot of Scorpio risings with, you know, Uranus going through their 7th house where they suddenly have an ending and they meet someone, or, you know, a friend becomes a romantic partner, or somebody comes in and they kind of come and go. So it does seem in a way that this is going to be very exciting, nevertheless. While you're going through that, at the same time, you also have Uranus square your Mars, which rules your chart. So it means that kind of like this unexpected up and down, back and forth with another person, Uranus in the 7th, is impacting the future of your status, 10th house, or your career. And it feels like there's a lot of going back and forth with like this other person. Now, sometimes the Uranian person comes in and they give you freedom, and like you find out what it's like to be in a relationship, and it's exciting and it's fun and it progresses quickly. Sometimes, touch wood, it can be that that person comes in, they get kind of rattled, and then they kind of come and go. So just for what it's worth, I would just say, you know, take that into consideration, that there can be almost like, you know, a few steps forward, one step back. That can happen. Now, when we look at their chart, Aries rising, and they have their sun in Cancer. They're in the midst of a Venus retrograde, so their 7th house ruler is retrograding in their 5th, reevaluating what they love, and it can be about a karmic connection, right, with someone. They're also ruled by Mars, and transit Pluto right now is in a square with their Mars, which means like it's a difficult time going through relationship breakup stuff. And this next year, Saturn's going to hit their moon, so they're also going to be reflecting a lot and like doing a lot of work emotionally behind the scenes, let's just say that. Uranus is also going to continue to keep squaring their Venus. So it's in both of your charts that it's like both of you guys are still like learning and adjusting and making changes to when it comes to relationships. And I think I would pay attention in Stephen's life, right? Because there's about to be like a Mars return. There's going to be a Pluto square. It means there's something building up in a relationship potentially coming that's requiring him to like, you know, clear out the past and be willing to move forward. Okay, that's going to be in October. All right, so in terms of like the Sinistry here with you guys together, their Mars in your 12th house does tell me that it can feel like very karmic, like you guys have unfinished business, very private, really intense and kind of passionate. Mars and Venus conjunctions are great. You guys have Juno to Juno, which is great for partnership. Their moon is in your 4th house, which is good for living together and I think emotionally relating. Saturn sits on your south node. So, you know, I'm not one of those readers who's going to be like, oh, this is your past life, like, you know, like soulmate. Because I feel like we have a lot of soulmates. But when I see planets on the south node in the 7th house, it's like, oh, you guys have done this before, right? So your south node is in the 7th house, which means there's karma revolving around, you know, this lifetime or previous lifetime experiences with relationships, marriage, you know, partnerships, what have you. And his Saturn sits right on it, which means like he's bringing back lessons revolving around relationships and commitment from past lives. At first, south node connections feel familiar. So it's like, oh, I've seen you before. Nice to see you again. And obviously it can be like glue. So it can bring you guys back together. Sometimes when you go through these relationships, you may realize like, oh, we're repeating past patterns and like, you know, we come together, but like, are we good and are we meant to be, right? Sometimes that can happen. And on top of that, okay, you guys have, look, 2 Mars-Venus conjunctions. So there is a lot of like, you know, love here, even if it's friendly, although Mars and Venus in Leo is romantic. I think that I would take into consideration that like next year, especially in the spring, when Jupiter sits on your south node and Jupiter is conjunct his Saturn, can be a turning point. That's like, you know, are we both really ready to do this or not? It can also feel challenging, I think, having their Saturn along your descendant. You know, some astrologers would say, well, that's glue. It can bring you guys together. It can be binding. Other people can look at it as, well, there can be some kind of limitation and you can feel held back. It really depends. You could look at it as, you know, they may go through periods of being slow, right? Taurus, I'm not ready. I haven't gotten my act together yet. I need more time. But there are some other factors here that make me feel like it is possible. You know, your Sun, Jupiter square, their Venus and stuff like that. So I like the fixed squares. I think that squares are not easy, especially in the fixed signs. And I've observed for a lot of like committed relationships and long-standing relationships, people generally who have squares, the relationship has more grit rather than a bunch of sextiles and trines where people get comfortable and things are easy and like there's no real sense of like pushing each other to grow and evolve. So without even running the report, you guys hit a lot of each other's midpoints, which is why I think you come together, because there is something that you guys are working out. I would be inclined to tell you that relationships are going to feel exciting but potentially a little erratic over the next year with the Uranus retrograde and the opposition to your sun. And there may be somebody who's a little reluctant to being like out in the open and very publicly in a relationship, which I don't necessarily think is bad for you at the moment, because you're also seeing that Uranus is squaring Mars, and it might mean that that person is saying, I'm here, don't worry about that. We don't need to be super relationship focused. Like we can kind of do our thing. We can build on that. And it's pushing you to be more independent, opposition to your first, but also be focused on your career, right? And it can be complementary. Like this person can be complementary. Cancer and Scorpio goes well together, but we got to look more at just the sun astrology. I think it's their sun in your 8th house, which pushes you to change and evolve, and the trines to your Venus and your Mercury is what I like. Lots of water in this chart. And so maybe also it's good for you to be around them, because you understand that, you know, healing is a process and you can be there through that process. And maybe there is some sense of like building trust, you know, through the vulnerability of supporting each other through that. Looking at their chart though, something I would say just to take into consideration is like when we flip it around, you know, you got a lot of your planets also in the 8th house, but also in their 7th. So this is what they attract, what they bring in. And all of your Scorpio in the 8th house is pushing them to change, heal, evolve, and acknowledge that endings can actually be new beginnings. It can be almost like a resurrection, right? So you bring all this energy into the 8th house and go, yeah, you've been through this crisis and all this stuff happened and you had an issue with your relationship, but maybe it's something that made it possible for them to realize like, wow, there is another person out there for me and it might actually be better and they can help me through the process of crisis. They themselves have Juno in the 8th house, which means they will meet their partner while they're going through some kind of upheaval, you know, maybe crisis related situation. Looking at your astrology with their chart, obviously in my mind, Moon, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, 7th house, Jupiter, Juno, you're a really good match for them, but you really want to make sure that they can see that and that they're going to act on that and like that they've worked through some of their stuff. That's my advice. And make sure that they're not one of the Cancers that are kind of getting stuck in the past, because the sun in the 4th house can do that. And I think that as they're going through eclipses with the South Node, right, the transiting South Node's moving through Libra in the 7th, sometimes karmic partners come in, could be you. Sometimes it can be that they're realizing that relationships aren't the primary focus right now, and eclipses in their 1st house is going to be more about where they're going on a personal level, which you're going to see for the next year. So too long didn't listen, like patience, basically. You want to see this Venus retrograde do its thing. You want to see if they're more open to togetherness, you know, after the mid-October eclipse. Most likely you're looking at closer to the spring, where you're going to have a better understanding of like whether or not this can proceed forward, I think, looking at both of your guys' transits. And I feel like he's somebody where once he's gone through this process with somebody, it can be something that can bring him closer together. But you guys have more markers of romantic partnerships, Mars and Venus, 8th house, that can be potentially really good in the long run. But it's very obvious that you're very compatible for him, but he has to see that and he has to act on it. He can't still stuck be in, you know, in breakup land. Anyway, I hope that's helpful and gives you a little bit of information on that. Good luck with the move. You're moving right before it gets cold there, huh? All right, so we've got Matt, and then we've got Anonymous, Maria, and then Carla. Maria, and then Carla. All right, let's pull up Matt. There we go. And Matt's an Aries rising, Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Libra. How are you doing with the South Node on your Moon? What's that feel like? Matt says, LOL. Okay, so I know this is kind of funny, but my students are quarantined right now, and so far our in-service meeting this morning, all the teachers of quarantined students attended via Zoom, and I fell asleep with the mic on, and someone told me they could hear me snore, but I don't know if they were kidding or not. Anyway, the camera was off, but everyone was trying to get in contact with me to turn my camera on, and I didn't get my camera on until 15 minutes after my boss was texting me, so I had to chalk it up to technical difficulties, which is half true because I couldn't get any tech to work. Shout out to Mercury retrograde. Anyway, my question is, will I get written up for these Zoom meeting issues today? Oh man. All right, so here's I mean, you know, astrology is alive and well with this one. Right now, the sun is moving through Virgo, through your 6th house of help, service, meetings, you know, co-workers, and it's opposing Saturn. And Saturn represents bosses. Pisces is screens. So I think maybe part of it is the Mercury retrograde, and yeah, being a malfunction, but also Mercury trying to relay a message to you that you didn't get. The sun in opposition to Saturn can be an indication that maybe there is going to be some kind of like repercussion brewing, but I don't necessarily see it. I don't necessarily see it being, you know, like a lot. I would say tomorrow's Saturday, so you're kind of in the clear. But when the moon comes into a trine with the sun and it sextiles Saturn, it could have been something, but you're not going to be working. Another time to watch is when you have the full moon, which is going to be on the 30th. And that's going to be when the moon is in conjunction to Saturn, which rules your 10th house. And it's about something not being seen and perhaps somebody not being as available. But I don't necessarily see that being like job ending or something where you're, you know, getting in trouble. And then Mercury is going to retrograde and it's going to trine Jupiter. If anything, to be honest with you, if anything, I would see it being more like you going back and forth and talking with other like coworkers and being like, has anything been said? What did you hear? I could see this also as like, you know, somebody saying to you, like, are you doing okay? Like, are you overworked? Like, do you need to make an adjustment in your schedule? Because you're also going to see that, you know, the sun is in opposition to Saturn with the full moon. And people asking you if, like, you know, you're doing okay, or asking you about your productivity. The other thing that I would watch for is going to be when Mercury comes into conjunction with the sun. So that'll be the cazimi. And that's going to happen at 13 degrees, which is an Aries degree. So it's quite literally about your actions and your performance. Let's see. And that's going to happen around September the 5th. Yeah, September 5th. So I would make note of this day, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but, you know, Mercury transits in general, particularly in Virgo, represents blind spots. It's intercepted in your chart. So when you have interceptions, it's things you don't see, you don't hear, you don't see coming. So when the sun and Mercury come into conjunction, it could be that, you know, you're having a conversation with a superior that you don't see coming, or an evaluation or a meeting, or this is a time where you really want to be making sure your speakers, your sound, everything is on. So if you're having another meeting, it doesn't happen again. It doesn't repeat retrograde. Could be a time where you're going over it, you know, with someone. But once again, that particular transit is still in a trine to Jupiter. Okay, and that still makes me feel like it's like positive. If anything, I think you're going to get asked about productivity, or if you remedied the situation. If they do chalk it up to, oh, you had issues with communication, I also feel like you're probably going to hear more from other coworkers. So I would be on the up and up, trying to kind of keep my ears open and see if anybody's saying anything. What you'll notice with this cazimi is that the moon is going to be in Gemini that day, and it's going to come into a square. So I'm wondering, the 5th or the 6th of September, is there supposed to be another meeting taking place? Most likely that could happen. And I don't know what those dates are. I don't have my calendar in front of me right now, but just make a note of those dates, because it's not just the cazimi, but Mercury is ruled by, or Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So it's going to bring up something similar. And I would say also like maybe get used to it, because so much of the Mercury retrograde in itself is about adjustments to schedule and routine and staff and ways that you guys are meeting and talking and maybe having meetings. And it is health related, Virgo. And they may be touching base with you guys and being like, hey, we're having to do meetings, you know, in this fashion for the next like week or two. We're going to hear about this a lot over the next couple weeks, unfortunately. You're going to see a lot of things that are going to change with people at work in regards to, you know, health and regulations, as much as I hate to say it, right? Honorable mention is Mercury retrograde. I got stuck in my off elevator at work. Yeah, well, mechanical things, right? Saturn, that's always Saturn. So the oppositions to Saturn. But if you were going to get reprimanded, I would have thought it would be Sun opposed Saturn. That's tomorrow. So unless something happens on the full moon, I'm not seeing anything that's definitively ending. You would have to see a hard angle to Saturn, and we're not really seeing that next week. It's already kind of happened. Mars already opposed it. I don't know if you're watching or what day that this happened, but my money would have been on the Mars in opposition to Neptune when you fell asleep. So I don't know if it was here around August 18th, or it was here around August 22nd. But Neptune is sleep, right? Or Pisces, sleep. Screens, Mars is your chart ruler. And Mercury was retrograding, so you're like, oh, I had a malfunction. So you can't really have another malfunction and fall asleep, I guess is what I'm getting at. Because if it happens again during the retrograde, you're gonna get called on the mat for it, right? And thankfully, you know, Saturn is sextiling your midheaven right now. You're not seeing anything that is like squaring that. So you don't really typically have the placements of somebody who would, you know, get in trouble. Let us know what happens, Matt. Oh, all right. So we have Anonymous. Let's see. Let's pull up Anonymous, who has 2 questions. Let's see. Where is it? Where did I put it? Maybe I put it under a different name. No? Could have sworn I did. Sorry, give me 1 second. Because we're trying to protect your identity. All right, let me put you back in here. So strange. Let's see. That's one. Uranus is right here. All right, perfect. Okay, so now we've got it. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I have a number of them. All right, so Anonymous says, here's my dating info. Okay. My partner and I live together and we've been together for 2 years. I just want to know if you see some form of progression in our relationship in the next 4 months. I'm really not wanting to waste my time and I want to know if it's going to end up in marriage or not. So I've got you here on June 27th, 93, 9:20 p.m. in Cape Town. And then your partner is October 2nd, 85, 1 a.m. and it was in San Diego. Okay. So once again, when we look at transits going on with relationships, you got to look at yours and theirs, okay? So you're getting a little frustrated because you're experiencing Venus retrograde through your 7th house. So there is like a slowing down effect. And when Venus drops into the 6th, you're reevaluating, is it going to work? Are we going to get married? Juno, are they ready or not? The conjunction to Chiron. Saturn is in your 1st house and you're still having your Saturn's return. Even though you're an Aquarius rising, I would listen to Pisces horoscope because Pisces is going to be really helpful in helping you understand what's going on with this Mercury retrograde. The truth is that I think you're kind of getting hit both with the fact that planets are retrograding through your 7th and you've got Saturn that's retrograding to your ascendant, which means you're looking a lot at time, not wanting to waste time, wondering, am I going to have to be alone? When are things going to evolve? And on top of that, Saturn is opposing Mars in your 7th, which means likely you've got a partner who's saying, I need more time, right? I'm working on things. I'm working on my career or work or productivity, Virgo, and making more money, 2 degrees. What is going to be nice is that you are going to be seeing that there's going to be transits that are going to be going into Libra in your 9th house, which I do feel like can be about talking about the bigger picture of where relationships are going. I also feel like Saturn, while it's retrograding, is going to come back into a conjunction with your natal Saturn at the end of the year, and then it'll start trining your Sun, which is about relationships. And the truth is like, yeah, 7th house can be about committed relationships, but actual marriage, like the ceremony, is more going to be your 9th house where you're having eclipses. So I do feel like it is very possible, but there's something that is being kind of held up right now, even in your chart, where like somebody's like, hold on, I need more time. Saturn's also going to come into a trine with your Sun, so there might be more talk revolving around like the future of a committed relationship and also children. So I wonder if you guys have had that conversation. In your chart, you also have Chiron along your descendant, and Uranus is retrograding over your Venus, which is relationships, and it's squaring. So it's telling me that there's some kind of like impatience, changes that need to happen with the home, really needing more freedom in relationships when it comes to the home life, and that there is a bit of a back and forth that you're doing with a foreigner, which is true. They're from a different country, 21. So it's like, part of me feels inclined to tell you it's a timing thing, right? Uranus conjunct Venus is like, oh, I need a change in this relationship. I'm getting restless. And in the 4th house, I'm wondering, have you guys started talking about the living dynamic and where things are going? And while Uranus is conjunct Venus, it's squaring all of your stuff, okay? So you want to watch for the Saturn coming into a trine with your Sun and also these retrogrades to finish. So when Saturn starts trining your Sun, which is going to be about January, I could definitely see things starting to progress forward. I also would want to see like Uranus off of your Venus, and next year Jupiter and Uranus are going to hit that. So I'm wondering, is it a conversation about the natural progression forward in the relationship, like making moves to be talking about if you are going to get married, making moves to talk about living together? Where are you guys standing when it comes to potentially being committed in what you guys both need for true like romance, 5th house. And if that means that you guys need to travel more, go out on dates, if you guys are talking about having kids, all of these conversations are going to come up. Saturn doesn't deny, he just delays. And it's very unusual when I see Saturn in the 1st house in opposition to Mars that there isn't a delay in a relationship developing. And it's also very unusual when I see Venus and Uranus in conjunction that there isn't some kind of feeling of like strife or discord in a relationship. And I'm wondering if it's like financial stuff, quite honestly. Okay, so that's just in your chart. their chart, oh, let's pull up their chart. There we go. Has Pluto in the 7th house right now. Oops. Pluto's in the 7th house right now, retrograding back to the descendant. So it may feel as if somebody's being like really intense about the commitment. And they also have Pluto that is, you know, squaring the nodes. Eclipse is in the 4th house. You guys talking about living together? Are you moving in together? What's the deal here? Saturn rules the 7th. And Saturn right now is in the 8th. And it's getting ready to come into an opposition with Venus. And he's got Mars and Venus here. I kind of feel inclined to tell you that with eclipses in the North Node in their 10th house, it's about like showing up, responsibility, like getting things done. You know, the horoscope's pretty good for Libras, you know, eclipses in 7th house to their sun. I think where he's going to have more issues next year is Saturn is in opposition to Venus. And there could be a situation where once Saturn opposes Venus and Mars, somebody's like, if you're not down for what I'm down for, I'm out. I don't think ultimatums are going to work, personally. That's just my hot take. I think the other thing to take into consideration is that, you know, he does have Pluto right now in his 7th sextile Saturn. So it is kind of saying relationships do need to change and they need to evolve and they need to get beyond just being kind of like surface level 5th house romance and dating. It needs to evolve into something else. So he's going to need some outer planets that are going to be trining either his 7th house, which he's going to have next year, or some positive aspects to his natal Saturn. And in my opinion, it's looking more like commitment is going to be much more likely after a series of conversations about home and living dynamic that I think is going to take place this fall. A Mercury retrograde in his 5th, which is about reevaluating whether or not something's working. That'll be in December. And then if he's not ready, I could definitely see a partner giving him an ultimatum or being like, we're either doing this or I'm out, potentially like February of next year when all these planets come into the 7th house. Because that seems pretty intense with Mars, Pluto, Mercury, all on top of his Jupiter, which is like, it's not working. So I feel like even though you're kind of saying like what's going to happen the next couple of months, to me it's seeming like the early year that would be more kind of coming out. And then when I look at you guys together, planets in the 12th house, Venus in the 11th house, you have to understand that so much of his astrology is about showing up right now and like really making an effort to actually want to be in a defined, committed relationship. Jupiter's on his moon. So he's got to want to be in that committed relationship, talking about making the status change. It's good for the direction of his chart. But still, your Saturn transit in opposition to all of his personal planets, like either on a personal, emotional level or on a financial level, if he's not showing up, a partner's going to get frustrated. And Mercury is retrograding back over his Mars and Venus in your 7th, which means, in my opinion, this Mercury retrograde is a really great time to be like, do you see yourself getting married? Is that something that you want to do? Like, are we taking steps in that direction? You know, like, what is that looking like? And you want to work with the retrograde that's going over his Mars Venus in your 7th house of marriage and the trines to Taurus. And it's about taking the necessary, or talking about taking the necessary physical or financial steps forward to make that more of a potential possibility come next year. So it's, you know, it's steps. Right now, Virgo is about, let's talk about the details. Let's work everything out, see if it's physically possible. And the goal would be to be doing that at some point, probably between Capricorn season and Taurus season. So sometime between December and April? Right? But a lot of this it's really interesting. A lot of this is kind of in your chart. And you guys have, you know, decent aspects. Sun, Jupiter, planets in the 7th house, planets in the 4th house. But really for me, it's very baked into your astrology. Like I can see where you're frustrated and you're like, it's him, he doesn't know what he wants. But Uranus hitting your Venus opposed to Pluto square your descendant is a lot of you going, I want some kind of freedom in regards to a situation, on the home front, or I want to move, or I want to move in together, or I want to do something, that's going to totally radically redefine my private life. With Venus in opposition to Pluto, it would also change your career. So I'm wondering, are you telling him you want to do these things, but is he looking at it going like, financially, I don't have the wherewithal to do that, and him realizing he would need to really do a lot of work to be able to make that possible, right? Saturn's trining your sun, so it's about talking about the future of a family and also a marriage. Just my own personal opinion looking at your astrology, because you have Saturn, because you have your sun that's in a square to the moon in Libra, and the sun rules relationships, and your sun is kind of slightly coming into an opposition with Neptune, and you have what we would consider a malefic in the 7th house, Chiron on the descendant. When you do decide to get married, in my opinion, it's like you want to make sure that it's the right time and it's the right person. I think I would say that to anybody, but especially with a chart like this, because sometimes some astrologers will say, well, Mars in the 7th house can lead to divorce, conflicts, and quarrels and fights, right? So you want to make sure that it's the right person. Mars in opposition to Saturn especially. And it's a lot of like you tuning into being like, these are the things I need, Saturn, in order to better kind of navigate whether or not you're moving forward in the relationship with the right person. And while you're having your Saturn retrograde right now, your Saturn return, it's not going to give it to you. In a way, I almost wonder if it's supposed to be about you going like, this isn't working for me, and telling him, hey, this isn't working for me, I'm not getting what I need, giving his chart the opportunity to really come into what he's supposed to be coming into, which is radically changing and redefining his relationships. Pluto in the 7th. Squaring Juno. Okay, which means that he has to be willing to let go of old karmic baggage revolving around concerns and fears about how things played out in his life, or make changes in the past to be able to move forward. In my mind, I think that when Saturn is maybe coming into his 9th house, that could be prime time for talking about engagement or marriage. Sure, that's next year though, So yeah, I'm thinking that that's more so possible then, right? But as much as I know you're frustrated, you got to give it till the end of the year with your transits, and it may even be until February before you make a decision about you and him together. Now, you also asked in regards to things to be mindful of, for the end of this year. Could be career-wise or what have you. It's a difficult transit for you. Venus retrograde square Uranus. Uranus rules your chart. So there's a lot of being like, if the relationship's not happening, then what is happening? What is working? And what I like about the retrograde is that it's sitting on top of your Juno. So it is trying to help you define what it is that you want in relationships and heal issues. And if it's not the right person, then cutting it loose so you're allowing the right person to come in. Venus is kind of smack dab in a square between Pluto and Venus. And that's a difficult place for Venus to be. So you're going to probably want to wait a little bit and see how this shakes out. But I bring this up because Jupiter and Uranus are both receiving squares from Venus. So it might also dramatically affect how you feel emotionally, 4th house, where you're living, what plans you're making in terms of where you're living. These eclipses that are coming in also are going to start impacting your chart, because we're going to be having eclipses obviously now in Aries and Libra, and you've got, Jupiter in Libra, Moon in Libra. So once we have these eclipses come in the fall, they're going to be pretty close to your moon. Okay, so maybe make a note of mid-October. That solar eclipse is setting intentions for new things, right? Revolving around 9th house matters, travel, belief system, philosophy, or philosophy about relationships even. What I like is that it trines your ascendant, and it's air, so it's about moving around, learning things, communicating. But an eclipse, a solar eclipse in conjunction to your moon, is generally a pretty pivotal month. You'll feel a lot of things change. And the moon is the ruler of your 6th house. So it might mean that you could find yourself in a situation going like, we may be on two different, perspectives in regards to relationships. And so it can have an effect where it's changing something. Also, Pluto's retrograde in opposition to your Mercury. So, this is also about how you're looking at change. And it's about not getting afraid of telling people this isn't working or this needs to end or I don't like this, and it's becoming more familiar with Pluto and like allowing Pluto to kind of like come in and help you rework the idea of like sometimes letting things go, right? Now, something else to take into consideration is like, you know, you're 30 now. So you're in an annual perfection year 7, which means when transits are happening in your 7th house where whole sign Venus is retrograding, things are going down. Well, look at what's happened in this last month. You've had, you know, the sun go through here, Venus is retrograded here. It's all been in squares to other parts of your chart. And you're very affected by solar eclipses because the sun is your ruler. So now that the sun has your time lord, now the sun's gone through the 7th house, you're going to want to look at the solar eclipse conjunct your moon. 9th house can be ceremonies, Libra can be partnerships, so it's talking about that, but it can take a whole 6 months for that to fully unfold. But you're going to be very impacted by solar transits all year long. So I think about how, you know, the sun and Venus came into conjunction, so it was seeding something, and that was in your 6th house, which makes me feel like what was being seeded was you realizing like, oh, maybe this is not working, or, you know, maybe I'm meant to meet someone else. So what was happening around August 12th, right? Was that a realization about one way or the other? Now down the road, Venus is going to come back into these same degrees and it's going to square Uranus. So this is really until about October. And then we're also going to see that the Sun and Mars are going to come into conjunction in mid-November. And that also can be saying, I want a definitive status change and talking to a partner about that, right? So that'll be mid-November. And then there's also going to be a period of time, I think it's going to be right before your birthday next year. Yeah, see, even in this chart, it's saying it'll probably be until end of January, beginning of February before you make a definitive decision. And then I think about how Venus and the Sun are going to cazimi in Gemini. And that'll be the new Venus star point. And that looks like it's going to be on your south node. June. Right before your birthday. That can be an indication that you're clearing some kind of relationship karma, particularly relating to like lovers and creative people. Gemini is 2, so it can represent 2 people, you know, or a relationship bringing in a third. I think about Jupiter going into this house as well. So I'm wondering, like, is it about you keeping your options open for another person? Does it potentially indicate that you guys get together and you guys do start talking about, you know, maybe having a kid? That could happen with that in a trine to your ascendant for sure. But intuitively, I feel inclined to tell you that you really need to let Saturn do its thing. When I had my Saturn, I have Saturn in opposition to natal planets, just food for thought, just to let you know, like, my experience. When I had my Saturn return, I was very agitated with some things that were happening that were getting blocked or that were not moving forward. And I finally just like threw up my hands and was like, I can't make this happen. I just have to just like deal with it. And like in doing so, it actually made better things show up. So if what you really want is like commitment, stick to your Saturn in your 1st house, which is focusing on the vision of what you need and doing what's best for you, and then letting other people respond to that. Because Saturn in your 1st house might be like, you know, you're acting selfishly, this isn't working for me, and then you have that conversation, which could totally change the dynamic of the relationship, right? But I'd be paying attention to the solar eclipse. I'd be paying attention to when the sun's conjuncting Mars in November. And I feel that it will not be until January or February until you really definitively make a decision when you start to see these conjunctions in your 12th house. But for right now, you know, what positive do you have to look forward to? The fact that there's like a complete reworking in your 10th house, which looks like it's going to be about work related things. And also the fact that you do have Saturn that's in a trine to your sun, which means you're getting in touch with what you truly need to feel love, what's going to make you happy, what's going to be the best for you creatively, what's going to be the best for you in terms of personal fulfillment in relationships. right? And I think that, you know, the transits happening, not just the retrogrades, but like the lunations too. You know, you had a new moon that was like right on your descendant, and it was in a square to all this stuff. So it was setting you up for a whole month of going, I need change. And now you've got a full moon happening in your first house, and it's going to be conjunct Pallas, where you're realizing like, oh, there's this pattern, this keeps happening for me, and like, what do I need to kind of like wrap up? I would go and learn about transit Uranus conjunct your Venus personally, because this is about you liberating yourself from something. And it's also, you know, in some hard angles in your chart. So you're going to feel a little restless until it's out of that, you know, 21, 22, 23 degree range, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. You got a lot going on there. We've got Maria, Carla, and then Catherine. Maria, Carla, and then Catherine. Let's pull up Maria's chart. Oh, wrong Maria. Hold on. Let's see. It was 91. See where some of you guys' charts went. Kind of weird. Must be Mercury playing tricks on me. Okay, so we've got January 15th, 1991, 9:32 a.m. Oh, Maria, are you here? Maria F. Now I'm realizing what happened. I don't have a city for you or your partner. I was putting this in earlier and I did not see it. So Maria, are you here? Maria F., you're asking questions about you and your husband and pregnancy. I'm going to put a pin in that. So if you're here, please give me the info on where you guys were born. That's if this is anonymous that's asking about when that's going to change. It's not going to be for a while. Until Uranus comes out of about 23 degrees. So I could definitely say about May of next year. Hey, Lika, we did your reading. Okay, cool. Are both of you guys born in the same place, Maria? Okay, thank you. And while I'm at it, Carla, I don't have your information either, so can you please send that? Oh, okay, you have the same chart. Cool. Okay, Maria, so I've got you here January 15th, 91 at 9:32 a.m. So you're a Pisces rising, and you have a sun and moon in Capricorn. Okay. And then I've got your partner, Virgo rising, sun in Aquarius, moon in Pisces. Well, so a couple things. It's more than just looking at the natal chart. You have to look at progressions. So when you're looking at pregnancy, you want to look at the progressed moon. You want to look at like the actual lunar phase that you're in with your progressions. It's pretty complex, but I'll give you as much information as I can. For starters, first of all, the moon rules motherhood in general, not just, like women, but motherhood and maternal instincts. And you have your moon in Capricorn, so it's a Saturn sign. On top of that, the moon does rule your 5th house. It rules your south node, and it rules Chiron. So you've got Chiron, which represents wounds or things that need to be healed. South node is some kind of something you're carrying into this lifetime, revolving around like healing, revolving around like maternal themes or maternal issues. If I just saw this south node Chiron in Cancer in itself and you didn't have all that Capricorn, I'd be like, hey, there's something, that needs to kind of get worked out here, revolving around, being a mom or your relationship with your mom. 2 is, you also have your moon that is in conjunction with the sun and Saturn. So it's kind of like saying basically there is some strain revolving around goals, 11th house, pertaining to what you need, what your identity is also, sun and moon. So your emotional needs, which can be restricted in Capricorn, your goals, Capricorn sun, and your karma, and then the opposition, right? So when I look at that and I put it together, I wonder, what is it that you want, right? What do you want? Because South Node in the 5th house means you've had many lifetimes where there's been children, there's been love affairs, there's been creativity, there's been having, taking chances. And in this lifetime, with the moon, Saturn, and the sun in opposition to this, there can be challenges revolving around Cancer and Capricorn related themes. Are you super consumed with work in your career and your goals, 10th, 11th house energies? And does that inhibit you or make you feel so incredibly focused with this Capricorn stellium, which is strong? It's a very Saturn signature, that you maybe didn't think about, or maybe you didn't really want children, or you weren't really, considering it until you started getting a little bit older, right? It doesn't really matter where the oppositions fall. That axis is always like home and family or career. And so I'm wondering, does that need to be balanced out? Can that be an indication that there are some issues revolving around conception? Yeah, it is possible. I'm not a doctor, but you have the markers for that. I wonder if that's been an issue. The nodes in astrology relate to the moon, and you've got Pluto that's in conjunction to your north node right now. It's been there for the better part of the last year. It's retrograding back over the north node, which is ruled by Saturn and the moon. So it's like, where are your goals revolving around what you consider to be your purpose? Where is that changing? Where is that evolving? And I wonder if that's something that's needing to be kind of worked out before you move forward, right? Okay, don't worry. We haven't even looked at his stuff yet. So we're just looking at yours. And sometimes it's a matter of looking at these energies and going like, okay, it's about restructuring where your priorities are and what your goals are and what your focus is. And that may be all that's necessary. When do I see pregnancies happen? Well, when you see like, eclipses taking place in the 5th house, when you see maybe Jupiter, especially an exalted Jupiter, going through here over the next 2 years and opposing your moon. Maybe when we start seeing, the nodes closing in and getting ready to square your moon. Actually, you're kind of in that right now. The north and the south node are currently squaring your nodes, and it's coming in for a square with your sun and your moon, which probably is making you feel like it's time to kind of make a decision about these things, or maybe that you're trying. I think Saturn coming into conjunction with your ascendant can definitely be issues revolving around the physical body, limitations with the physical body, the immune system, if getting like you're getting older, even if you're not old, but Saturn on the ascendant will be like, like I'm feeling time, the pressure of time more. So I see all of this stuff kind of like happening. I'm wondering if while you're going through the Mercury retrograde right now, if a partner is reevaluating and also like looking at their health or their needs or their fertility matters, and if that's something worth looking at, maybe, I don't know. The other thing is that the 11th house, traditionally in astrology, you know, it does represent other people's view of children or other people's like lovers. You know, you'll hear that that's like, you know, the people that other people like date. But it can be their perspective and their relationship also to children. So I look at your 11th house as your partner's 5th house. And all of those planets in the 5th house is that has he had some concerns and issues revolving around kids, right? Is there fears there? Is there a hang up there? All right, so in terms of like his information, so we can make sure that it's the right information. You gave me March 2nd, 84. And that's 6:54 p.m. in Queens. Oops. Virgo rising, right? This is the right 3-2, yeah. Virgo rising, sun and moon in Pisces, and Saturn is hovering, which rules their 5th house, where Pluto is entering. Saturn is hovering in conjunction to their Mercury. So, I mean, great. This is a great example of astrology. We didn't even look at your partner's chart, and I was like, what's going on with the Mercury retrograde in the 5th house? Is there something going on with them in terms of their health or their fertility? Okay. So prime example, he's a Virgo rising, but you could look at this as a Libra rising chart because Saturn's in the 6th house of health. And Saturn is currently been in conjunction to Mercury, which rules his body in the 6th house of health and issues. Saturn also rules the 5th house of children. Now, if you want to get technical, this is all in the Placidus 6th house, but Pisces belongs to the 7th. So it's like kind of him looking at his health, partner looking at her health, going, you know, like, what do we need to do to get on the same schedule or to be on the same wavelength, especially emotionally? Pisces, when it comes to potentially having a kid. Now, in his chart, 29 degrees on the 5th house cusp does represent a kid coming in, and it is like a crisis, or it requires a lot of work. It might be something he does when he's older, which is pretty common, what you see for Virgos and also Libra risings, because Saturn rules their 5th houses. He does have Saturn square Venus, so that does also indicate that there's, you know, some stuff that he's working out in terms of his personal finances before the kid stuff happens. And Pluto's going in and out of this 5th house, and definitely Pluto going in the 5th house can bring about some kind of dramatic change in regards to having a kid. So, you know, once again, a number of different ways we can look at this. In this next year, Saturn's going to trine Saturn. So we're going to see Saturn in the 6th house trine Saturn, which is, you know, positive for children. You're going to see like an exalted Mars and planets go into the 5th house, and that's going to be pretty much January of 2024. So that can also be a really good time potentially for kids. So it's doable. I mean, he's got a lot of planets that trine Saturn, so it's definitely doable. But looking at your astrology, timing-wise, just in your transits, I would say when Mars is on your moon, that can be a good time for trying to conceive. And so that's going to be right around the end of January of 2024. There will be a Mercury retrograde there, so it can materialize as you trying or finding out if you're pregnant in the new year. And then you're going to have planets crossing your ascendant. That's going to be trining your 5th house. Next year, you're also going to have an eclipse that's going to be in your 1st house, and that could also bring pregnancy. So you'll have one in April, and you're going to have another one that's going to be in September, right? So these are the things that I would be looking for timing-wise. And especially this one in September, because you have an eclipse in your 1st house, conjunct, obviously, Neptune, your chart ruler, the moon, that's a baby, and you have Mars going into the 5th house. So I actually wonder, are you going to get pregnant at the end of the year, and are you going to be giving birth in the fall? Just looking at that transit, right? That's possible. But just for fun, looking at your progressions, generally the progress chart will show me something. And you are a Taurus rising in your progressions right now, which means you're ruled by Venus. The moon and Venus have been in conjunction. Venus has been retrograde in your 5th, so there's been a lot of like trying to figure out how. And the sun is ruling the 5th house, and over the next 2 years, your sun is going to hit 29 degrees. Another theme you can look at is when there's eclipses coming. So you're going to have an eclipse. Here we go. You're going to have an eclipse that is going to be on your ascendant at the end of October in your progress chart. That can be an indication of a pregnancy coming. You're also going to have an eclipse in opposition to your moon, and that's March. So the corresponding reoccurring thing that keeps coming up is like February, March-ish. That eclipse can also be indicating something's kind of coming in then, okay? So I would be looking at the beginning of the years when that's very likely to be happening, and I would assume by the time you're having the eclipse in the fall that could be the actual birth. If not, that eclipse could also be looked at as a pregnancy. So is it possible? Yeah, but I would say in order to facilitate that, part of it is timing, especially, you know, the other part of it for you is definitely going to be a situation where, you know, you're going to be seeing that Saturn's going to sit on your ascendant at a 10, which means you're also having to really commit more so to your body and to your goals. And I think part of this is going to be about learning how to really focus on those goals, and it may be about kind of scaling back a little bit and trying to balance out a little bit of that Capricorn, which is happening for everybody born in 1989, 1990, 1991, you know, who has those Capricorn stelliums. The nodes are squaring, saying, are you going into overworking and overdrive, or are you going to pull back and are you going to go more into the Cancer stuff, and that's going to be more about nurturing, right? Anyway, hopefully that's helpful in giving you a little bit of direction, but definitely the turn of the year looks like something can take place there. Good luck. All right, so Carla, thank you, Carla. I do have your info. Let's see. All right, and so Carla's question was way at the top, so let me go back here. At least I thought it was for some reason. There we go. Hey Candace, I spoke my first question. 12075. Yep. Okay. Question is about career and finances. I've worked as a vet in the last 20 years, have 2 kids, feeling financially limited, ready for a massive change, launched a line product in April, working hard to grow successfully, currently focused on creating content and for my website and social media, already selling products, but it's not yet profitable. When is the best time to launch new platforms and ads? Do you mind me asking what kind of products they are? Is it relating to pets or animals? You're welcome, Maria. Good luck. Okay, so, Capricorn sun, 29 degrees, Cancer rising, moon in Taurus. Are they herbal supplements? The North Node's in conjunction to your moon. It has been, at least. So what you sell and what you have to offer is more or less your 7th house, right? This is your marketplace for moms and babies. Okay. So your marketplace is this. Pluto's in conjunction to your sun, so you've been really focusing on trying to make money, having a breakthrough in what you're creating business-wise, Capricorn. Weaning from breastfeeding. Okay. I love that the North Node has been in conjunction to your moon and you've been creating products for women, right? Especially relating to breastfeeding. Cancer is the breasts, or the moon is the breasts. So Taurus can be supplements, products, things like that for that. I think that's a good move. I think the problem is that this has been squaring Pluto, and it's basically saying like this is about evolving and leveling up and creating more of like a public space for you, or like a reputation, or like how you're promoting yourself. And that you're going through some personal period of change and transformation of your career and how you're identifying. You want to see like a nice Saturn transit. So when we have like a Saturn transit going on that's supporting your 7th house, things are going to get easier. Saturn is retrograde right now. You're going to see that it's going to start going into the 9th house in the new year, and it'll start sextiling, which might indicate that there's more international shipping and handling going on, or you're branching into other markets, or maybe you're going to start doing some teaching or some lecturing or some publishing of some kind. And money has probably felt a little tight because Venus has been retrograde in the 2nd house. So you haven't really been like receiving as much. Personally, I would say probably right around the time that Saturn is direct, you might feel like you're selling more. I also feel like you don't have to wait that long. You're going to have a full moon that's going to be in Aries, which may produce something. I would recommend after the new moon in Virgo, right around the 15th of September, you can, if you want, do some sort of like, start promoting something or doing more on social media, because this is a new moon in this part of your chart and it's trining your descendant. So I would be hitting it hard mid-September into October in talking about your product, promoting yourself, doing that kind of work, maybe adding new stuff to a website. And then when you have the full moon in Aries, here around the 28th of September, that can be good career-wise and marketing-wise. And then you're also going to have an eclipse, which is going to be the end of October. That is going to be conjunct Jupiter in your 10th house, and that's also good career-wise and work-wise, and that's going to trine your 7th house. So mid-September through about the beginning of November seems like a pretty decent time. Now, I still feel like it's going to take to really see the full effects of some of this marketing and working more, and maybe 7th house as you're changing and transforming your audience. I think of like Pluto on your sun in the 7th house is like, you're working with maybe moms that are older, women that have concerns about their skin also, because Capricorn can be skin. Maybe you're trying to work with influencers and people who have more recognition. But once Saturn starts coming into a sextile, so it's going to be right around March, and then you're coming into eclipses in your 10th house. March on is when you're really, I think, going to start seeing the effects of this quite nicely. Especially once you get Mars into your 10th house in, spring going into the summer, and there's eclipses still in your 10th house. There's a lot of room for exposure. I think of like Pluto on the sun as a very painful change and transformation, and there's almost like the ending of one way of making money and the beginning of another. And it may also be about you really reevaluating, knowing your audience, and maybe working with somebody professionally who can help you really go and market yourself, and whether or not you're willing to do that, and like working with somebody who really knows how to drive traffic and how to be able to help do the branding. And it could be a partnership. So if you want to do paid partnerships, that's one way. But I definitely think there's something to that 29 degrees sun. Like, do you feel like you're marketing to a particular demographic? Like age-wise or ethnicity-wise? Or is there like a specific group of people that you're trying to work with? And also, you're going to see Saturn sextiling your moon pretty much all year. So there's a lot of building that you're going to see more so manifest, I think, in the spring. Needs a lot of exposure. If this were me, when Mars is going through Capricorn later this year, going into the new year, you can do it sooner if you want, but, I think that you're potentially going to have either a time, January going into February, where you could meet somebody very significant who could promote your product, that could drive up sales. You could meet somebody who you could partner with who could really help you promote what you're selling. Or it could be a situation where that's when you come up with a new product that could be very lucrative, end of January, beginning of February. If you want to do something sooner, then I would say look at the Mercury retrograde that's going to be taking place now as trying to find ways to be driving more traffic to your website or your social media. Can be a good time maybe talking to somebody about marketing. And it can also be a time when you're kind of getting all of these things set up so you can be posting more and marketing yourself more. But now And mid-December are the two times where you're making these changes. Yeah, and I think the other thing I would say to take into consideration, because you have that Taurus moon, is that you're also going to have opportunities to be working and creating product for like skin. I know that sounds weird, but skin, and also things that may be like, you know, postpartum, skin bouncing back and stuff from, you know, from pregnancy. That could be something else that can come up as well, because that's generally what you see with the late degrees of Capricorn. But Mars transits are what really kind of kick up your chart. And you're going to see a Mercury retrograde right over your Mars. So I actually think you're going to probably try to do as much stuff as you can until about December. Once you get to December, if you're like, I can't do this myself, I'm going to go and find somebody to help me with my content creation or promoting my product or driving sales, you're going to want to do that, because February through June is when you're going to see the most exposure with your brand, and probably the most that's picking up. Yeah, so I would be launching other products personally January through June. And if you feel like you can't do it now, you can start looking for somebody, and you can start hitting the market where you're getting stuff out in December, January, but January through June is when you're going to see the most growth. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Thank you for your question. We've got Catherine, Alana, Rachel, and Yulia. Catherine. All right, so Catherine's asking two questions, career and Sinistry. So she says, what's ahead for us? Let's see, let's put this other person up here. All right, so Catherine, you are Scorpio rising, Sun in Taurus, Moon in Sag. And we got your partner here, February 23rd, 1990. And let's look at their chart. Sag rising, Sun in Pisces, and let's see, their moon is in Aquarius. You're welcome, Carla. Okay, so relationship-wise, between the two of you, this is interesting. So I noticed that you're still going through your Saturn in your 4th house transit. And you've got Saturn that's hanging out in your North Node. We'll talk about this more in regards to your question, but your partner's sun is on your North Node. So are you guys already living together, or are you trying to figure out where you want to live together? Or is there something going on revolving around figuring out the home base or something of that nature? Because their sun is on your North Node and Saturn is there. You know, for them, knowing that I think they're a Sag rising, you know, Saturn going into the 4th house is like trying to figure out home and family related things too. And you guys could be doing that together, actually. There's a lot of connections in the 4th house to make that possible. But when I think of your relationships, I think about the fact that Uranus just hit your Mercury. So has there been a lot of like sudden unexpected conversations with your partner about what the future holds? Have you guys been talking a lot more about, you know, potentially talking about furthering the relationship in commitment? Jupiter is on your descendant, it's on your sun, it's on your Venus. So that feels positive to me about what you guys can be building or creating together. And it can be a really fun romantic time, but it can be also about talking about the necessary steps that you have to take before the relationship really evolves. Oh, we're looking for a place together in January. Okay, so you're doing it. Yeah. Yeah, you know, Scorpio rising, especially with Pluto in the 1st house and all this Taurus in the 7th, you know that when relationships happen, right, and you got a lot of planets in your 7th house, it puts you in a position of like being vulnerable and being seen and having to make change. it's the Sagittarius moon that makes you a little cagey. Because your moon is in the second house, and maybe you like having your own things and you like having freedom, and it's in opposition to Mars, which means like you like knowing that either when it comes to being able to travel or when it comes to your resources, at times you like being able to make those decisions without always having to consult with another person. So I think the Jupiter transits for you are really good. I think Jupiter in opposition to Pluto is interesting. I'm having that too. You know, Pluto is about change and evolution, and Jupiter is about the possibilities and the potential. And so Jupiter in Taurus is everything you have that you can obtain, all the growth that can happen. But Scorpio is like, at what cost? Or that's scary, or I don't want to go there, you know, or I have to change. I don't want to change. So you're going to realize that in order to move forward, it's going to put you in a position of having to make some changes. But you know, it is what it is. He's feeling it too because he's got planets also in the mid degrees of the fixed signs. I like that his sun's on your north node because it means that he helps kind of guide you in the direction of where you can go when it comes to building a home. Pisces, something that's romantic, creative, fun, whimsical, kind of vibey. So I think that, you know, the direction where you're going with this is good, and Jupiter is going to go back and forth over your descendant, you know, all year. So there can also be this feeling of talking about ceremonies and traveling and creativity, and you know, talking more about the future of what you guys want to create together, right? Whether the fifth house is fun date nights, or it's romantic getaways, or if you guys are also talking about, you know, like maybe like having a kid. That's definitely the theme for Scorpio rising right now, with, you know, Jupiter in the seventh house. His partner's talking about how the future could go between the two of you, and it's sextiling Saturn in the fifth house, which is, well, how do we make these things happen? Right? So, you know, I would say be open to change. It doesn't have to be bad. It can be a good thing. And knowing, you know, that he's a Sag rising, and I think Saturn on his sun right now is a lot of like being able to cover the costs financially revolving around increased home expenses, or having a more expensive rent, or, you know, figuring out how to make more money at work. You know, these things are all kind of like happening. This person, similarly to you, has a lot of planets in the first house, which represents power and control. You know, Scorpio and Capricorn are the two signs that want to have the most control. So both of you guys are kind of used to being in control. And especially somebody like this that's got a second house sun, north node, and moon. So they also can be very fixed in their ways. They have Gemini in the descendant, and Jupiter is going to go into that house next year. So that's a good indication of, you know, moving forward and moving in together. I think that the December period will be interesting for them because you're going to see Mercury, which represents a partner, go retrograde over the ascendant. And I'm wondering if it's a situation where there's like some preemptive playing house, kind of living together, you staying with him prior to moving into another place type of vibe. So I don't know if like somebody's going to move in with somebody right before you guys find a place, or you guys are going to try it out right before you move, or if December is a lot of just spending more so time together as you're preparing and getting ready to move. But that looks like it's coming with the retrograde. And I don't know how long you guys have been together, but this person's kind of been to hell and back with relationships, with this Saturn, Venus in the first house, and Pluto's gone through there as well. So, wow. Yeah, there's been a lot of relationship change for this person. And I think a lot of it has been them needing to kind of figure out and find themselves before they're really ready to show up in a relationship. Saturn's on the sun all year, so the truth is, yeah, there is going to be a lot of stress revolving around career and finding his way, but it's going to kind of filter out in the new year, and it should manifest or end revolving around him making more money. He may have a moment in December or January where he's like realizing that he needs to ask for more, right? Or do more, or, you know, raise his standards. Work-wise, he's going to have an eclipse in his 10th house. So mid-October, when he has an eclipse there and Mars is there, there's going to be some kind of action going on at work for him. But I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Just know that, you know, the South Node going through his 10th house means that there's change going on at work. And I wonder if these changes are going to be about whether or not he's willing to let go of one thing to embrace something new. And that's going to be pretty obvious in September and October. In regards to you and your transits with your career, Venus has been going retrograde in your 10th house. So a lot of this has been about, moving forward in a relationship dynamic. Yeah, but also it's been about, do I like my job? Do I want to stay here? Do I keep doing this? Do I go back to something that I used to do? Do I reevaluate what direction I could, go in moving forward? And, how you're relating to people at work as well. So there can be issues with women at work, but there can also be a sense of being like, do I still love what I'm doing? How do I make a change? The retrograde is going to be over here at the beginning of September, so we're almost there, but you're still going to see Venus square Uranus and Jupiter on the back end, so it can also kind of represent still going through some kind of professional growing pain. And Mercury will retrograde technically back into your Placidus, so it tells me that you're still kind of like reevaluating a work thing, or maybe there's things that are slowing down work-wise and you're kind of like restructuring something. When you have a really strong sun transit, that will produce some kind of big work-related situation. And while you've got an eclipse that's coming in conjunction to your sun. So I would make note of October 28th, give or take a couple days on each side. You're going to have a full moon lunar eclipse, which means emotional completion and conclusion, right on your sun. The sun rules your 10th house. This is ruled by Venus. And Venus will be in the 11th, which tells me that there is some sense of you like working with a group of people, maybe working with a friend, some kind of big opportunity, some kind of professional goal that, may come full circle, which is very big for you with this. And it's conjunct Jupiter, so it's pretty positive, actually. If you're somebody who works from home or you're in the creative field, this can also be an indication that you have more clients coming in, or that there's going to be like a big breakthrough or something that can evolve. And Saturn is also sextiling your sun all year. So I think Saturn on your North Node in the 4th, sextile your sun. Do you work from home? Are you trying to get more so into like a routine? I would imagine like with Taurus sun, the 6th house, Scorpio rising, you're just feeling like you're just like grinding it out, and it probably feels like all work and no play. But you're going to start to really see the effects of the consistency and like adhering to a specific schedule really playing into your favor right around the end of October. Hybrid. Okay. Well, get ready to probably be working at home a lot more with Saturn hanging out on your North Node and an eclipse in, technically, yeah, an eclipse in your 6th house. I will say also, because the sun rules bosses, right? 10th house and career, and it's in your 6th, there's going to probably be a schedule change, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. And I think you're going to look at it and you're going to go, oh, it gives me more time to do more at home or to be present with the move. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily bad. Yeah. But 6th house eclipse, be mindful of your health, particularly Taurus can be the throat or the thyroid. It's at a 4, so it can be about your emotional habits. It can be also about pets or, home or family related pets. What else? Yeah, just be mindful of like your energy levels. I mean, I think Saturn sextile your sun, you're fine. I don't really see any harsh aspects to your Mars, so you're okay in that sense. But sometimes, touch wood, eclipses in the 6th house bring changes to your schedule, or it can also just be that you're feeling under the weather, right? Especially with Mercury and Mars on your ascendant. So take care of that immune system. And look for right around, September going into October. That's when the Venus retrograde starts to kind of ease up. But Saturn on your North Node wants you to be home more. Hopefully that is helpful for you. I've got Alana, Rachel, Yulia. What's up, Alana? We meet again. I feel like I spoke to you not too long ago. Well, I spoke to you. You didn't speak to me, but I spoke to you. Let's see what you have to say. See your Virgo rising, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Capricorn. I've been wanting to leave my job because it's a shit show, but my boss just quit and they informally offered me head of the department, which could potentially be a lot more money and good for my next move. But they may try to make me do it without a title or money change until the end of the year and or just not compensate me as well as they should. I'm also concerned about the longevity of the company. Any insight would be amazing. So there's a number of different reasons why this is going on. I will just say that on one hand, you have got Saturn retrograde in your 6th house, so that can represent more responsibility and like having to tend to things or, you know, like kind of carry the team at work. It's also Saturn retrograding over your Mercury, so you're really kind of going, I need to be careful about what I agree to in terms of work and scheduling and contracts and what we negotiate. And between Mars on your ascendant, where you're kind of feeling like you need to take action, and Mercury retrograde in your 12th, where there is some anxiousness revolving around the future of a job situation, opposition to your 6th, it all makes sense. When I see 29, squaring 29, 29, now is not the time to make a move. And I know you're a Virgo rising, so Mercury retrograde really does affect you, but you're almost a Libra rising. So I'm looking at like this Mercury retrograde in the 12th where you're having some anxiousness about something or trouble sleeping or worried about a work situation, Virgo, and like not sure what to say. And Mercury is retrograding short of opposing Neptune in the 6th. So it's like going like, I don't know, can I trust this? Can I not trust this? And so much about the Mercury retrograde in your 12th trine Jupiter is about you having conversations with other people about what they have to offer you and whether or not they're going to support you moving forward at work. Mercury rules work. I am a little suspicious personally with Saturn retrograde that, you know, take the amount of work that you think it's going to be and like double it, because it's going to be a lot of having to comb through things and being responsible for things that people overlook. Saturn in the 6th in Pisces. This is about coworkers. And I would not do this without more than, with anything less than a written agreement. Because 3 degrees represents something you have on paper, something that you write, that you can refer to, that you sign. Mercury and Pisces can be things that people promise you, but when Saturn comes back here, it's like, are they actually going to pay up? In terms of your money, okay, this is Venus. So you have like a South Node solar eclipse coming into the 2nd house pretty soon, which can indicate a pay increase, even if it doesn't come until next spring. We also, you know, are in a Venus retrograde. So Venus is retrograde right now. And that makes me feel like, you know, you hoping that other people are going to compensate you for the work that you're doing. I don't know. I feel like it could be a situation where Venus comes into opposition with Saturn and you realize how much work it is and the fact that you may not be getting what you feel like is fair. And that could be the case right around the beginning of October, right? So I would say, is there a way for you to be able to negotiate the terms and get it definitive and look through it and agree to things and like sign it? And maybe it's like, I am either going to get the title or I'm going to get X amount of money, with the understanding that there's going to be a reevaluation, or that somebody's going to, you know, maybe give you a raise, you know, in the next year, whatever you agree to. The devil's in the details with this retrograde. And so you really want to be mindful of like how much work you're putting out, right? Virgo, that's potentially impacting or taking away from like you and the effect that it could have on your health, right? The oppositions to your planets in the 6th house. I also think that, you know, because you're getting ready to have the North Node hit your Venus and your Mars, you know, you're definitely going to be in a position where you're going to have people that are going to have more to offer you. People who might pay you more. Venus rules your 2nd house, Mars rules your 8th. You know, partners who might, you know, show up and do more for you or provide more for you here as well. So I definitely think that could happen, personally. And yeah, I don't like the setup right now, because if you agree to these terms without having anything defined, I give it about maybe until mid-October, and then you'd start looking around being like, this is a lot of work, and realizing maybe why somebody else quit and you would want to make sure that you have the security that you're actually needing. Because as soon as the sun starts opposing Neptune here, this will be around mid-September, you're going to realize that like you're going to have a hard time like kind of directing a group of people. It's going to be like herding cats, pun intended, Leo. But when the sun is in Virgo, where you're like, oh my God, like this group is driving me crazy, and like how do people handle this, and it opposes Neptune, you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, there are some other issues here that are beyond you, and maybe the job is getting passed off to you or another person, but there may be some problems actually within working with the company that need to be dealt with in order for you to like definitively do your job. So when you say things like, well, I feel like there's not a lot of time being here, you got to take into consideration next year. Saturn is going to start coming in conjunction with your sun in the 6th house of groups and coworkers, and the sun can be bosses, and finally you're going to have Saturn off of your Mercury, but the Saturn conjunct your sun is like where you really are potentially having challenges dealing with a group. And if you're feeling like you're giving and you're not receiving what is owed to you, you're going to get, kind of agitated here. Although it looks that to me, you can also secure a position, and you can also be focusing on productivity and like guiding a group of people, but it's going to be dependent, how well you perform is going to be dependent on how you're handling your time, and also like who's helping you, because the 6th house tells me that you're going to need help. So you got your work cut out for you. You need to have more than just a verbal agreement. Know that by the time you're getting into spring, summer of 2024 and Saturn hits your sun, that's a pretty significant defining moment, I think, for the first time in almost 30 years. Saturn's hitting your sun as an adult. So that's also going to be about you making some big moves in regards to your health, your habits, your routine. I want to make sure that you're working in a space where you're not like killing yourself at work, because Saturn and Neptune in your 6th house can literally mean that you're working a schedule or in a space that's not conducive to your health. And I want to make sure that some of those concerns are dealt with early on, and that you're going to like get an assistant, or that you're going to be able to hire people, or that you're going to have some kind of flexibility with your schedule, because you're going to want to have that as those planets are coming into contact with your sun and your descendant. Mercury transits are what make big job changes happen. And, within 2 years, Saturn and Neptune squaring your midheaven too. So there is going to be a sense of, I would say if you go into it knowing that you may have a job change next year anyway, to be honest with you, that may happen. So if it's something that you're considering doing now, I would define my terms and probably use the Mercury trine Jupiter to negotiate this. So for example, Mercury is going to come back into a trine with Jupiter, and I would be trying to negotiate September 3rd or 4th. Then you're going to have a new moon in Virgo, and then Mercury is going to come into a trine with Jupiter, so you can, start the job or take that position or start getting paid more, hopefully by the end of September. And then you're going to have Mercury trine Uranus, and I have a feeling you're going to start seeing by about mid-October, oh, this is why that person left, right? Because to me, with Neptune square your midheaven, there's issues going on at work where things are not being done, or people are not being as productive and stuff's getting overlooked. Let me know. Hopefully that is helpful for you. I got you, Kimberly. I saw you. Don't worry. All right, so let's get Rachel. What's up, Rachel? How's it going? Another Virgo rising. There's a lot of you guys here. All those 29s, that's a lot. All right, so Rachel is a Virgo rising, sun in Taurus, moon in Gemini. Rachel says, would love some insight on a court battle I'm in with my dad's kid over custody and child support. Also wondering if love life action is coming anytime soon. Thanks for your patience. So court can be a combination of Venus being retrograde, because Venus rules your 9th house of legality and it's retrograde in the 12th, so you can be feeling like a little anxious about a court-related thing involving children, right? Retrograde. It's also in a square to your sun, so it does feel kind of like is it going to work out? What's going to happen? Where am I going? You know, maybe having also challenges with men. I could also see this coming through Saturn being in the 6th house, which is usually like where we reassess what is and is not fair in relationships, or sometimes like settlements involving like, you know, court cases that can come up as well. Personally, when it comes to your children, that's Saturn. And Saturn is, you know, in your 6th house. You're seeing oppositions to Saturn right now. So there can be a feeling of like being spent, or, you know, getting pulled in 2 different directions, or, you know, having a situation where you're like, you know, questioning whether or not it's all going to pan out. Thankfully, planets are getting ready to leave your 12th house and starting to come into trines with your natal Taurus placements and planets in the 9th. When I think of the 1st house, I think of like bravery. I think of action. I think of a Virgo rising with like the Sun and Mercury and Mars there as being like on time, very articulate, having all your materials ready, you know, being able to kind of cite any documents or anything, and like being ready to show up and being prepared, like mentally. And even though Mars is getting ready to go into your 2nd house, you know, that Mercury retrograde and the Sun being in your 1st house is a lot of just, I think, showing up and staying optimistic with the trines to Jupiter. You know, in particular, you're going to hear for a Taurus that, you know, the Mercury retrograde is in your 5th house, right? So for a lot of Tauruses, the retrograde is like, what's going on with my children? You know, is there a change going on with my kids? You know, do my kids need me more? You know, how am I feeling about children? And it's in your 1st house. So it's about the actions that you are taking in regards to preparation for a child issue, okay, or a custody issue. This retrograde trines your natal sun, which is about really staying positive and optimistic and having faith that the universe has your back. So prayer can be really helpful right now. Meditation, visualization, setting your intentions, right? And also like letting yourself have a bit of a break and like knowing that whatever is meant to happen is going to happen, and maybe reminding yourself of that. 2 is you're also going to see that, you know, Mars isn't a trine to Pluto. I mean, you've got a lot of positive placements here. Unless you were having like a Saturn opposition or square, which you're not having, then I would have some concerns. The next couple days until the Sun comes out of an opposition with Saturn, you are probably feeling like it's a bit of a burden, but that will pass. And I noticed you said that you're having the actual hearing on the 5th. So this is going to be obviously earlier in the day. Depending on when you do it. You're going to do it when the moon is in Taurus and it's in your 9th house, trine Pluto, right? And it's trining planets in your 1st house. This is pretty good. And it's in a sextile to Neptune. So honestly, something about even this lunar transit makes me feel like there is the possibility that someone is not prepared, or there is something that's missing, or like scattered, or they don't really have it together. Moon Uranus means that there can be a sudden unexpected situation revolving around scheduling Uranus, or maybe that you are having to take off work maybe to deal with this. Maybe that's one way of looking at it. And you have the Sun and Mercury trine Jupiter. Very powerful placements. I mean, to me, this looks like, you know, you're going to have not only the faith and the vision for things panning out, but also the support of judges or an attorney or somebody who's going to be kind of overlooking the case. Jupiter's on your Sun. I mean, like, all of this comes down to kind of like faith, and whatever is going to happen is meant to happen. What I will say is that you are going to have the moon in opposition to your Mars and your Saturn, and so it's really important to just like breathe, let other people talk, even though you're going to want to kind of move through things very quickly. Like, let them say and do what they need to do. And if there's going to be any kind of delay to the case, or, you know, if there is something that needs to be changed temporarily, you may be kind of tinkering with that and reevaluating that up until you get to about maybe January. And when Mercury goes retrograde, which it will in your 5th house, you might be going, okay, we're seeing how this is going until the end of the year and whether or not we're going to kind of maintain the changes that we've made maybe with the custody. But you need to be mindful that things could change then as well, because you're going to have a retrograde conjunct Mars, which means I have a feeling if this is about you getting more custody and him having to pay more, it could be a situation where it's like, you know, might find yourself back in this situation come the turn of the new year, when Mercury, which is you, retrogrades in the 5th house with children and it conjuncts Mars, somebody else. So he may challenge that, or it might be a temporary change to the order and you guys are kind of reevaluating that until the end of the year, and then somebody might try to change it again. As much as I hate to say that, that is very possible. You also are having, you know, eclipses that seem to indicate that there is stuff going on with your finances. So you're going to have an eclipse conjunct your Venus. So that can be good both for your love life in a sense of maybe traveling with somebody or what have you at the end of October, but you know, like resources coming in from another person, Libra, revolving around, you know, children, right? The squares to your 5th house. And I'm not just saying this. When the North Node goes to the 8th house, you receive more from another person. So spousal support, inheritance, refunds, you get bonuses. And it is ruled by Mars, which means in order for you to get these things, yeah, you're having to file documents and you're having to fight Mars and Saturn for these things. Right? So it does make sense that that's getting activated in the midst of these eclipses as well. Love-wise, Saturn retrograde and on your descendant, still in your 6th house, technically. And I'm looking at more of the eclipse around your Venus. The end of October is when you're going to see stuff happening because it's on your Venus, which is love. It's conjunct Jupiter, ruler of the 7th house. And I definitely feel like that's a huge turning point. And I wonder if that's going to be about you meeting somebody who lives somewhere else or about you doing some traveling. Oh, your sister hired your lawyer. Mars and Saturn in the house of siblings. That's interesting to fight. And then also Scorpio, did she help you pay for it? Because that could be other people's money. Trine Saturn. Maybe she knew somebody. I like that. Mars and Saturn. So you've got some siblings that are kind of gritty. Uranus is also in opposition to your Mars. So that means that, you know, legal situations suddenly, unexpectedly, 8th house is like challenging your communication, but also like probably somebody coming in who's gonna like really, you know, speak up and who's gonna really say something. Yeah, she paid. Scorpio. Interesting. You got Mars and Saturn retrograde in your 3rd. It's karmic, right? So she could help you with lawyers. She could help you with moving. She could help you with vehicles, things like that. But yeah, that's cool. So Uranus and Jupiter opposed your Saturn and your Mars, and your karma kicked in regards to a sibling helping you legally pay for things revolving around children. Cool. I like that. Yeah, I mean, like, look, take time to sit and reflect and meditate on how you want to see things go. That's really what you want to be doing right now, because that's what's going to help you, right? Jupiter is about prayer. It's about vision. It's about the faith. And if you're finding that you're stressed out, use like Bach essences or floral essences or aromatherapy while Jupiter is on top of your Venus. Like, it'd be good for you to have a little bit of quiet time every now and then to like sit, meditate, have a diffuser, or maybe use aromatherapy on certain points and then like meditate and visualize how you want to see things go. You can also work with like roots and herbs and things going into court. Brown court case candles are good. You can light those. But Little John, it's called chewing root. So like back in the day, people would, you know, they had to go to court. They'd stick it in their mouth. They'd chew it up and then they'd spit it on the floor right before they go in front of the judge. But that's how it got the name Chewing John. Please don't spit it in the court. But you can get it from like, I like Lucky Mojo or like some root work companies. You can buy the root and you can wrap it and set your intentions for going into court and rub it with oil and put it in your pocket, like court case oil or High John oil. You can use that too. Put it in your pocket, put it in your purse, and you can take it into court with you. But Little John works very, very well for that. Yeah, I mean, you know, Neptune on your descendant, So delusional stuff, sure, I could see that. But, you know, what you're also seeing is part of what's going on is, you know, Saturn in the whole sign 7th, trine Saturn and Mars is like, you know, their actions or their lack of, Neptune, is putting you in a position where you're like, okay, I'm finally going to say something. And I think with the eclipses going through your 8th house for the next year, this is a period of, you know, receiving support. But yeah, you got to fight for it, unfortunately. Pretty good transits, though, for the most part, to be honest with you. Let us know what happens. Okay, so we've got Eulina. And I think we have officially hit that point where I have to put a couple charts in because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 or 8 people left. So if you guys want to give me like 5 minutes so I can put these charts in for you, and then we'll get to the rest of the people. So Eulina, Anais, Juliana, and Frank, you guys are all next. Frank, can we get your birth date? Frank, are you there? Are you here, Frank? I know you have a question about, looks like your question is, interpret Mercury in Taurus, trine Uranus in Capricorn. I just need to know what houses, so I need to know your birthday. All right, so let me make sure I got everybody here. I think I do. Frank. Okay, so we're going to talk to Yulina. Am I saying that correctly? Looks like you're born January 3rd, 86. And that was at 1:46 p.m. Yep. Taurus rising, sun in Capricorn, moon in Libra. She says, I'm thinking of resigning at work due to a conflict with a manager. Spent 12 years with the company. Will I be making a mistake? Yulia, okay, thank you. I know you asked me 2 questions. You have a question about another person, a partner. So I will look at that in a second. All right, so first of all, interesting. So you've got Mercury going retrograde in your 6th house right now. So this is about you going like, am I changing direction in terms of where I am working? 6th house is where things can sometimes feel out of balance. You know, what's fascinating to me is that you're having this retrograde that eventually will bring Mercury into a trine, right, with Pluto. So it is possible that there can be a potential to like heal or change or transform something. So part of me feels inclined to tell you that this retrograde can give you the opportunity to do that. You are getting ready to see Mars come into conjunction also with the moon. And so I'm wondering, are you having issues with a woman? Because Mars is going to conjunct the moon, Libra, a woman, at 7 degrees. So working relationship can kind of get a little intense here pretty soon. And Mars can represent being like attacked. Libra can mean, you know, feeling like somebody is being kind of like passive aggressive. So I would watch for when Mars comes into conjunction with your moon, because there can be a little bit of friction. And that's going to be taking place right around September 6th, 7th, or 8th. Especially when the moon goes into Cancer on September 8th and it squares Mars on your moon, there could be some issues communicating. That's going to feel like a full moon for you in your 3rd house. And I think that this is going to be like a turning point in a conversation. At the same time, the Mercury retrograde, like if you've been wanting to change jobs or quit for a while, this can be bringing that up. And the trines that it's making to Jupiter in the 1st house makes me feel like you're kind of like the voice of reason. So I wonder if this is about you being like, am I going to give it one last shot to try to communicate with this person or somebody at work to try to see if we can reconcile, right? And then eventually, when Mercury is direct, that information or that conversation or that resignation will have already come out. And I do think that you're probably getting ready to tell someone that you're done, if you're going to do it, by around mid-September, right after that new moon. Now, the other thing is that you're going to have an eclipse in your 6th house as well. So even if you've made up your mind, the actual eclipse can be about you being like, and we're done here. And that's not going to come until mid-October. So I'm wondering, well, do you try to like make amends in September? You can't. You decide that you're going to quit, and the solar eclipse is like, you know, you actually ending things right here. And my money would be on that mid-October turning point. When Mars is conjunct your south node, you have a solar eclipse conjunct the south node. This is all ruled by Venus. And you're going to have Venus that's going to be in Virgo coming into an opposition with Saturn. I mean, are you potentially prepared to, you know, maybe be in a situation, because I'm looking at the squares to your 10th house, to maybe not have something lined up, you know, until later in the year. Mercury will retrograde through Capricorn at the mid-December point. So it can be about you getting ready to go back to or return to work. It could take that long. So if you're potentially quitting in September or October, you need to be prepared that it could take that much longer until you get back into work. Saturn also, you're going to have Venus in opposition to Saturn. Venus is your chart ruler. So it's like, no matter what I tell you, even if you give it another month of trying to make it work, I do feel like come mid-October, you may actually quit. You have that aspect, that's 1. You have the solar eclipse, that's 2. And you have Mars conjunct the south node. So everything is kind of saying like it's leading up to that point. But you need to be prepared to potentially maybe not be working until the end of the year, I guess is what I'm getting at. If you're in a position where you're like, that's okay, it's not a big deal, I'm fine with it. You know, so much of this retrograde Venus for a lot of Taurus risings has been, you know, something's going on where you're really trying to focus on your emotions and how you're feeling and looking at how it's affecting your private life before you potentially do make some big changes or decisions to your career or your relationships with other people. So maybe you're realizing that it's having such an impact on you that you're like, I can't keep doing this, right? That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. When you have a really strong Saturn transit or transit to your natal Saturn, and Saturn is square Saturn, so there can be issues kind of getting along with groups of people right now. This can be a feeling where it's like, you know, you're having to work a little bit harder, either to work with groups of people at work, or you're working a little bit harder to actually find a job that you feel like is fulfilling. Now, sometimes Saturn squares are like that, you know, and I can see Saturn's going through your 11th house of not always getting along with other people. And you are not going to be feeling like you're willing to take a job where you're going to settle for less than what you deserve. Perhaps maybe this is that squeeze that's really pushing you to really finally make the jump. But it is looking right around mid-October that that's going to happen. Do I think you're going to regret it? I mean, down the road, you're going to have the South Node come into conjunction with Moon as well. So it makes me feel like you may still keep having these problems with somebody at work, and it creates like some emotional distress and disharmony that can lead to some bigger problems down the road. So maybe it's about really kind of making the decision that you're going to start looking for something else, that you're going to leave, and getting them ample notice. So that way, everybody involved is kind of better prepared for your potential like segue. And for Capricorns also, you know, eclipses in Taurus still that are coming. It's about what's going to make you happy, and also potentially giving you the opportunity to do something a little bit more independent. Now, I know that you asked about your partner. And this is
January 3rd, 1986 at 1:46 p.m. Oh no, that's you. I take that back. Sorry. February 9th, 1979 at 5 a.m. approximately. Okay, so you've got, oh, I like your guys' Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars. Why are you guys not working together? Hi, that's like power couple right there. Oh, you guys have Venus to Venus. That's cute. Uranus in your 7th. North Node in your series. And Jupiter. I love this. Is your partner really encouraging of your career stuff? That's a good, I like those aspects. Man, nobody can tell your partner nothing, huh? Look at that square. Sun, Mercury, Mars square Uranus. They do not like being told what to do. Couple things in regards to these charts together. I really love your Sinistry. I love that all of your Capricorn sits on his ascendant, and you guys are both very Saturnian. I love that you create a full moon together, your sun and his moon in the 7th. That's cool. I love the Jupiter stuff in the 2nd house. I really wonder if there's some potential for you guys to do some kind of work together. Because 2nd house and 10th house is like what we're building, what we're physically creating. Yeah, he does not want to be told what to do. And he's probably been a real pain in the ass recently with these Uranus squares. Changes that have been coming up, you know, potentially at home or like with a romantic partner that's pushing on him to make some change. He's in his Uranus opposition right now, you know, so he's got Uranus in the 10th house. So he's like kind of used to having all kinds of change or being independent or working, doing his own thing. And like now that energy is funneling into his home life and it's squaring all of his 2nd house placements. So really it's about like some big changes either in his love life or in his home dynamic. Anyway. You know, the thing that really kind of catches my attention is the fact that both of you guys are really feeling the effects of the squares. So now the transiting South Node is in Libra, squaring his ascendant. The transiting North Node is in Aries, squaring his ascendant. So it's pushing him to work harder to make changes on the home front and maybe with family. And then on the flip side for you, because you have all that Capricorn too, it's coming into a square with your sun. So the North Node's going through your 12th house where you're going through a period of being like, I just have to kind of like let Jesus take the wheel. And you're probably like, I need some peace or some quiet or some rest. And it's really pushing you in a way that has to do with like your faith and your belief system. Or maybe you're feeling anxious and you want to travel, or maybe you're thinking about doing some continuing education. That can be coming up for you as well. But both of you guys are going to be feeling the pressure cooker. And for, you know, Capricorn placements in general, it's kind of like a lot of like, where are you going to take action, right? In regards to making some changes in your life. I would imagine with his sun in your, technically in your whole sign 10th house, Uranus in your 7th house, and then he's got, you know, planets that are coming into your 4th house. The changes and the transformations that he brings to your relationships impacts both your career and your home life. So there's something going on here that is going to get triggered. And you're a Taurus rising, even though you're not a Taurus, but you're a Taurus rising. Part of the Uranus transit could be about you saying to him like, okay, well, you know, something's got to change with where we're living, or, you know, I want to do something different, or I'm going to be home for a little bit. And like that can be the Uranus transit in his 4th house. Once again, me personally, and not all astrologers feel this way about squares, but especially fixed squares. I've seen this in a lot of relationships that the fixed squares can create so much tension and pressure to constantly be evolving that it keeps things interesting and it may be challenging, but there's a lot of growth that happened in these relationships. You also are no stranger to having intense partners because you've got South Node, Pluto, Mars, Saturn all along your descendant. So I think that you're used to like people going through periods of change and transformation, or they're intense maybe, or maybe you've just had a lot of intense things happen with relationships. And
And I think now that you're already through your Uranus transits on your ascendant, this is a little bit easier for you. It's not easy for him. He is still in a big season of change. And I would start maybe learning about the Uranus opposition. Maybe you can talk to him about it a little bit, because that's what's happening. And in the next year or two, Jupiter and Uranus are going to be meeting in his whole sign 5th house. That's generally, if somebody has managed to go this long without like having a kid, usually that transit can produce one. And it's all going to be squaring his planets in the 2nd house. So a lot of this is like a lot of, what are you doing with your money? Are you happy because of the way that you're making money? Do you feel like you're creatively fulfilled? What do you need to create beyond things that are just going to bring you physical or material values? So it's a lot of like homework, basically, that he's doing, or, you know, private life work, or building, you know, a home or a relationship, or focusing on kind of like slowing down a little bit in the changes that he's making on the home front. And he's gonna resist a little bit, because it's all gonna come down to, well, how does that affect me? And then Venus retrograde in his 12th house, his 7th house on top of all of that. So I'm wondering if there's been a little bit of like a back and forth already with a partner saying like, well, you know, I think I'm going to make a change, and I'm potentially going to make a change at work, and then how it affects you, and also, you know, your resources. And then it's like you talking to him about all of this, and him being like, okay, you know, like, how can I help? And he's a Capricorn rising, but he's got a ton of planets in his whole sign 2nd, which means he has like a Taurus signature. There's a lot of like, what can I give you to fix this? You know, what do you need me to do to fix this? And what he's learning is that it's going to be more about emotions and relationship support, not necessarily physical or financial support, right? And he's coming into his Saturn opposition. Oh my God. So it's like Uranus opposition and Saturn opposition at the same time. That's fun. Ooh. There's just a lot changing for him right now, work-wise and in terms of partnerships. And so I feel like, you know, you guys might kind of feel like you're on opposite ends of the spectrum, where one person's like working and really focused on, you know, what's going on financially. Somebody else can be like, well, you know, I don't really know what's happening. Things are changing. And it's pushing you guys to like learn through these houses, which are financial, but the signs which are financial, to talk about how you can better support each other through these changes, right? That's interesting. I would imagine your guys' composite chart is even more interesting. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, so I've got Anise. Where is this? Make sure I save this. Could have sworn that I did. Where is it? There we go. Okay, so oh, sorry. I'm now seeing that this was anonymous. I apologize. Okay, so got your birthday here. You're asking questions about a relationship. Just ended a 5-year relationship. I need to know what's next and if it was the right thing. Well, Capricorn rising, Sun in Scorpio, and your moon is in Libra. 7th house represents relationships ruled by the moon. You have moon in Libra. You're starting to feel that Mars is going to come into conjunction with your moon. The south node's going to hit your moon. And then eclipses are going to start aspecting your moon. All indicate relationship changes are happening. It's the season of that right now. On top of Venus, which has been retrograde through your 7th house, right on top of your north node. So essentially, you know, Venus is about relationships. 4th house ruler, which is home situations or ends of situations, and it's been retrograde on your north node at a 16 degrees. So I'm wondering if you live together, or if it's about changes with a family dynamic, or if it's about, you know, relocating. That all can be happening. You're also going through a period like where Pluto's conjunct your ascendant. So that's been happening for the last year, but now it's retrograding. So you're going through a period of change and realizing, okay, you know, I'm changing, I'm transforming. There in turn, so are my relationships. And technically, Leo belongs to your 8th house whole sign. So it's about how you're approaching this change emotionally, psychologically, but also financially. And then Mercury is retrograde here as well. I don't really get paid to tell people my opinion, so I'm always like really cautious with like, oh, was it supposed to happen, right? Did I make the right decision? Did I do the right thing? When I think about Pluto on your ascendant, it's about you going through a period where, you know, let's see. Cut off the name. Oh, okay, thank you. Going through a period of, you know, being able to make changes that are really difficult, they're really hard, right? Capricorn, it's work. But the opposition to the 7th house means that, like, as you go through change, you know, it's going to impact your relationship, it's going to impact your home. So I'm kind of like putting the pieces together, looking at all of this, being like, okay, like, what's happening here? You know, was something not working? Did you not see a future in terms of living together? Were you having some family dynamics coming up? All of these things can be kind of going on. And then eclipses in your 4th house, bringing you home to maybe having your own space. It's kind of like across the board, you know, I can see all of the changes. And you also are coming into your Uranus opposition, where it's a lot of change in regards to your emotions, your home, or your private life. So there's a number of different ways that I see this. Is it obvious that if it wasn't potentially happening now, that it could be happening down the road? Yeah. I think you probably would have seen maybe Mars come into conjunction with your moon, which would have been at the end of September, or the South Node coming into conjunction with your moon, which would have been in the new year, or the eclipses happening in aspect to your moon, which would be in the spring. That also tells me if you're clearing out a relationship that's got to get cleared out now, it's opening up the doors and making it possible for new karmic relationships and people to come in that you can connect with and that you can meet. Generally, we let go of things when South Node or Mars stuff aspects the 7th house Lord, and you have both of those things happening. I also feel kind of inclined to tell you that generally when we have retrogrades, if there's been some problems for a while, that's usually when we flush it out. And it's been probably really hard for you because this retrograde has been squaring the 4th house, which is like, okay, is it really over this time? You know, am I really putting this, you know, behind me? Am I going to find somebody else? I've sometimes seen retrogrades like this for people where they clear something out, and then ultimately what ends up coming through on the opposition, which could be like, you know, through Aquarius transits next year, it could bring some kind of period of like more personal fulfillment, or you meet another person. And I think about Venus going direct and hitting your North Node. And I think if it is about separating, it's about separating and doing it in a way that's kind of like still being good to the other person, right? Which is not, obviously it's not easy. But I'm looking at your transits around September 18th when Venus is conjunct the North Node and being like, can I still have love for this person? You know, does it have to be nasty and brutal and mean? No, maybe it's just being like, you know what, I'm still going to be compassionate and it's difficult, but if this is what has to happen, this is what has to happen. And like not allowing it to be something where it's causing a lot of emotional distress or strife. And this is a chart that this is a lot harder if your family is intertwined, if you have kids, if you own a house, if you live together. Those things are going to make this more complicated. Yes, I'm not going to candy coat it. Yeah, that's difficult for sure. But by the same token, if this has been something that's been brewing for a while, okay, then this is the season of change as we're coming into this eclipse season. And I think that it's also going to give you the opportunity to move or spend time with family or kind of figure out your own home base or spending more time at home, maybe making some changes aesthetically. Maybe you might consider a move. That can also happen. And then when you have the South Node come in conjunction with Juno next year, and then you're starting to see, for example, like Jupiter trining your moon, you might find the second half of next year you're in a relationship with another person. I know you're not thinking about that right now, but that could happen, right? obviously you want to look at your progressions and like other things going on, but so much of your astrology right now is about like kind of letting something go because there's a new version of you that's emerging. And if partners can't kind of, you know, get with that change, you're going to feel like you're outgrowing the relationship. And you're so used to having so much change and things going on professionally, and usually you can kind of work with that, but you've got all your heavy hitting planets. Look at this. Usually all your planets are up here, right? So it's like out, work, traveling, you know, out and about doing things. And where all the outer planets are right now are at the bottom part of your chart. Pluto's going to be here, Saturn, Neptune, North Node, Jupiter, Uranus. Okay, you got some, you know, Sun, Mercury, Mars, whatever at the top, but that moves pretty quickly. So you're going from like a life where you're so used to being out there to now all the planets are at the bottom part of your chart, and you're like, wait, I have to stay home and process my emotions, or I got to figure out where I need to be grounded for a little while, or I got to figure out a routine. Like there's a lot of things that are now more about personal self-reflection and integration. That seems to be the focus right now, and it seems like a little discombobulating, personally, I would assume. And then a Mercury retrograde in the 8th is also about reflecting on change. And so that can be a really great transit for like, you know, therapy or, you know, getting readings, things that are going to be more like introspective, or rituals revolving around, you know, cord cutting, releasing, letting go, especially with Mars and Pluto in a trine right now. It's about really kind of like letting some things go if they have to kind of fall apart, right? Because you have Leo intercepted in your 7th, obviously the Venus retrograde might be also you getting kind of like frustrated looking at things, being like, why am I not getting the response that I want from this person? You know, or like, why are they not fighting for me? Or like, why is this not? And whether or not you're getting clarity on if they are also equally as affected by this as you. A lot of people are separating right now. And it's a very common thing right now. The South Node in Libra, are you kidding me? Relationships are unraveling, and it's unraveling. Why? Because Venus is going retrograde. And it's about people going like, I know in my heart this is not the right relationship. And it's tuning in with the North Node in Aries, which is people going, I gotta leave, I gotta do what's best for me, I gotta make the change, I gotta save myself. And then when Mars goes through Libra, and then we have eclipses there the next 2 months, oh my God. Like divorce attorneys are gonna be like rolling in it. So know that collectively there is this sense of separating and decoupling because of self-preservation, right? North Node in Aries. And also staying in relationships. People who are trying to force relationships the next 2 months are really going to feel it. So maybe it's best that maybe you were like, hey, we're either going to end it, or we're going to take some space, or we're going to reevaluate. Obviously, like when planets are around your moon, like when the South Node hits your moon, I'm not going to say that you may not still potentially talk to this person or reconnect with this person, but the next month or two, it's about like trying to consciously separate in a way that's about still being kind to one another. With Venus on the North Node, how can I still be kind or loving in the process of potentially this transition, right? Hopefully that's helpful. Sending you lots of good healing vibes as you go through this season of change. And I think you'll be feeling like you're going through another one, okay, around December. So know that when you go through that retrograde again, that's another period of change. But probably what you'll be finding is right around February of the new year, you're like adjusting a little bit better and realizing why you had to go through some of these changes. All right, so we have got... Did Frank ever come through here? Where are you, Frank? All right, so let's see. So we've got Juliana. Yeah. I would go and learn about Pluto transiting your ascendant. With Capricorn, you know, hiking can be really helpful for you. Personally. Empowering, personal transformation, that kind of stuff. Let's see, where is this chart? Why are some of my charts missing? Oh my God, Mercury retrograde is going to be the death of me, I swear.
Oh. Let me pull Juliana's chart up here. August 5th, 79. There we go. Our dog's name is Frank. So I can hear him when I'm like, Frank, are you there? And he's running around somewhere. He's probably like, I'm here. All right, so I've got you here, Juliana, August 5th, 79 at 8:20 a.m. And I want to know what best careers fit me according to my chart. Ooh, I like to play this game. Okay, so for career, we're going to look at a couple different things. We're going to look at your 10th house. Okay, we're also going to look at your 10th house lord, which is Mercury. We're going to look at your 6th house and its aspects, and maybe we'll look at how you make money here. All right, so first of all, you're a Virgo rising, which means that you have mutable angles. So I've never met a Virgo rising that did not have two potential jobs, or they might pivot, right? Because Gemini represents duality, or wearing multiple hats. You have Mars in your 10th house, which is the ruler of the 8th, which means you like to talk to people about making change. You like to encourage people. You may also work with investments, or cutting things, or writing things, right? Gemini, Mars in Gemini is about like movement and things that allow you to change the way that you communicate. It also can be like very competitive as well, and that you're kind of, you know, driven by something that's going to allow you to kind of like take action, or maybe even travel. At 17, this is a Leo degree, so it might mean that you like to talk about creative things. You might work with your hands. You might also be able to draw or design things. And the ruler of this is Mercury, and you've got Mercury retrograde in Leo. Technically in your 11th house, but it is very close to your 12th whole sign. This would be a stellium. So I can see that you're very talented in like creative things or the arts, or maybe you like encouraging a group of people. Generally, you know, Virgo risings that have this many planets in Leo, they have like a lot of like hidden creative talents. Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus. I wonder if this is about writing things, or publishing things, teaching things, children. It could be younger children. It could be like, you could be like an art teacher with this. You could be somebody who works in photography. You could be working in a business that's about like costuming and design, or like the industry. And then when we look at your 6th house, which is like the spaces that you work in, this is Uranus, and you have Uranus in the 2nd. So it might mean that like you have lots of changes in the space that you work in, or maybe like different offices, or maybe you like work independent, or maybe you kind of, you know, change jobs often, or maybe you're looking for freedom in how you work. And how you make money is Venus, right? So once again, Venus gets tied into Mercury. So do you have a background in like acting, designing, costuming, things that are more animation, design, you know, fantasy related? Has that been something that's interests you at all? And then that south node in the 6th house also tells me that like you're not here to do regular, everyday, practical work, right? You're not here to like show up to an office and have like a daily routine. That's not really what you're here to do.
with all these planets in Leo, in the whole sign 12th and the North Node in the 12th house, I also wonder, like, oh, do you have like a spiritual interest? Like, do you want to be somebody who travels and teaches like retreats and does like yoga and meditation? Because that could tie into that being in the 12th house as well. Yes, it interests you. Okay. Let me ask you a question. What have you done? And do you find that you have a job that you do, but you have like a creative talent or a business behind the scenes, or like this fantasy idea of what you could be doing that you focus on a lot? Just seeing what you're saying. What have you done? That's more what I'm kind of curious about, because you can be very diverse with Mars and Gemini in the 10th house. So super spiritually inclined. Okay, so it's more it's the whole sign then. Yeah, I mean, look, Sun and Jupiter in the 12th house, that's generally somebody who's like, I travel, I want to talk about past life things, or I want to talk about belief systems. I want to travel and educate people. Leo is creatively in a fun way. Okay, so you're a realtor. Moon in Capricorn is practical, so that makes sense in the 4th house. But if you notice, it's a little disjointed, right? So you've got the moon that's in a sign that's professional, but it's disjointed. It's in conjunct your Venus and your Mercury, which means what you may be doing that allows you to own property or work from home, Moon in Capricorn, does not seem to totally relate to what you would rather be doing, right? Oh, you're a teacher. Okay. Sun, Jupiter, that's good as a teacher. Generally, people who have mutable, it could be Virgo or it could be Gemini in the 10th house. It could also be somebody who like writes and speaks and communicates. It's clear, like I said, you can do more than one thing. If this were me, because you've got Mercury retrograde in conjunction to Venus and your Sun and Jupiter, I think it would be really a good idea to consider taking some of your spiritual interests and maybe trying to create like groups for it. I wonder, with all these planets in Leo, because it is very creative, if there's a matter of you being able to relay some of your spiritual work to younger people, right? Personally. Because Leo can be talking about younger people or children. And where you're going to do some of your best work, because you have Mercury and Venus technically in the 11th, is like with groups. So you can be creating a business that's about, okay, I can talk to you and make money, you know, discussing ways to be able to kind of like change your beliefs and your resources and your values based off of like spiritual guidance you're giving. Maybe you're talking to groups, but it would allow you to then, you know, work with people either one-on-one or do like retreat work or to do traveling work, right? Something that I would take into consideration maybe also, because you have Uranus in your 2nd house, okay, so of making money in an unconventional way. Uranus rules your 6th house. Have you ever considered maybe tying your real estate business into like feng shui, where you can not only go in and like sell homes, but you can work with people and help them reorganize and kind of spiritually jazz up places so they're more likely to flow better or to sell better or to help people feel a little bit more so kind of like comfortable in the space that they're in? It's food for thought, especially because you have Neptune in the 4th. You're very like aware of some of that stuff, like the vibes that an actual home can have, right? And I would assume, I don't know where you live now, but you have the chart of somebody with Neptune on the IC. You're supposed to live in a foreign land somewhere away from home. And all of this Leo trines Neptune. So like being away from home allows this chart to kind of change. And I would play around with like relocation astrology and maybe see where you can like move or visit or spend time part of the year in a space that's going to change the relocated chart. And it could bring your Sun, Mercury, you know, Venus stuff onto your ascendant or into your 2nd house. But this strikes me as a chart where if you were to stay home in Brazil, it would be like I feel like I'm kind of like a foreigner in my own country. You know, I feel like kind of isolated. Like this is not where I want to be. I'm dreaming of other places. And then you'd go to other places and your astrology would change, right? And I can see you work well in partnerships or helping other people because you have Juno on your midheaven as well. So it could be about partnering with people, providing services. But because this is your natal chart and you've got mutables on all the angles, you'll go through situations every 7 years where work changes, home changes, relationship changes because the Saturn squares, right, that are going to reactivate this chart. US is away from home, so you already did it. So maybe look at your relocated chart in the city that you're in. But I really like the idea of you considering interior design. Maybe you'd be really talented at photography. I know you may not realize it, but you would with some of these placements. And I would also be seriously considering looking into like feng shui and other things that you can be doing to kind of like move the energy of homes around. And that would be a great way for you to continue to keep doing your real estate work, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you and give you some food for thought on what you're good at. But you can do a lot of things with that midheaven. Okay, so I did see Frank popped in here. Carla said, this resonates. Frank, can you please give me your birth date? I have your info, but I need the date. Thank you, April 12th, 1990. $8:30, Opelika, Alabama. Here we go. All right, so I liked your question. You asked a very specific question about a natal aspect. You asked, interpret my Mercury in Taurus trine Uranus in Capricorn. Okay, so 8:30 a.m. That gives you a Gemini rising, Sun in Aries, Moon in Scorpio. Ooh, you're the inversion of me, literally. My Sun is 22 degrees Aries, and excuse me, my Moon is 22 degrees Aries. My Sun is 18 in Scorpio. You and I are very similar. Okay, so you're asking about Mercury in Taurus. There we go, right here. Okay, and it's in a trine to Uranus and Neptune, by the way, in Capricorn. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. For starters, your Mercury is intercepted. Okay, so I'm gonna be really specific about some stuff here. In astrology, if you don't use whole sign technique, sometimes you have interceptions. And this is where a sign gets swallowed up by a house. It's a fancy way of saying it's a blind spot. You can't really see it very well. You have to take into consideration the sign and the house and the planet. So in theory, for you, hold on a second. Is the chart up? Can we get the chart up? Sorry, there might be a delay. Chart. Sorry guys, hold on. Where's the chart? Oh, there's a delay. Okay, sorry guys, hold on. There we go. Okay, so here we go. So you have an intercepted Mercury, basically. All right, so when you have Mercury intercepted, it means that something about the communication one way or another sometimes is not clear, or something can be overlooked or not seen, like something like that can kind of come up. Mercury deals with communication, the mind. It can also deal with the nerves. It can also deal with processing things, right? So when you have Mercury in the 12th house, I believe that houses trump signs, it means that you're very intuitive. You might be really psychically sensitive. You may be somebody who is like in tune with other worlds, right? You're into dreams. It can be spirituality. There can also be a sense of being like a little secretive or a little shy when it comes to relaying information or communicating with people. And in Taurus, it's a fixed earth sign, so it tells me that you're really fixated on how you communicate and how you get the point across. You're very literal when you communicate. And it can be slow getting the point across to people and how you communicate. You might have a very defined voice as well. Usually Mercury in Taurus has that, or maybe like Mercury in the 2nd house. So you should have a nice tone because it's ruled by Venus. And Mercury is your chart ruler. So having your chart ruler in the 12th house means that to some extent you're relying on your intuition. Sometimes it means that there can be self-undoing, right? That can kind of come up as well. And 11 degrees is a degree that deals with Uranus. It's an Aquarian degree. You like astrology, but you might be secretive about it. You like to learn about past lives. You like to decode dreams, right? It also means like secret issues that you have with people. It could be siblings. It could be worries about finances and money or security. Your Mercury is also conjunct Pallas. So Pallas Athena deals with patterns, strategy, war. And it tells me that you pick up on sequences and patterns. Like you can see things. Okay, and I don't know if this is about like psychically. I don't know if this means that you're strategic in how you connect and you deal with people. Your Mercury is pretty aspected because it's got a lot of other things going on, like an opposition from Pluto and the moon. So it's like you kind of know how to deal with and communicate and like talk to sometimes crazy or difficult people. You know how to use your intuition to avoid from there being any potential issues with people at work. Or you might be really intuitive when it comes to handling difficult clients or maybe even animals. And Mercury, yes, is in a trine to Uranus by about 2 degrees, but also Neptune. So Mercury trine Uranus is great. Thinking on your feet, things move very quickly. You might really understand the language of astrology. You're very intuitive with Mercury trine Uranus, especially in the water sign houses, but in a physical way, right? So it means that you might use tarot cards because it's a physical thing to receive the information, crystals, pendulums. You might work with like herbs and other things like that that are kind of earthy. The 8th house is about magic. So maybe like celestial magic is something that you really like. I also kind of feel like you did this in a past life because Mercury's in the 12th house. 12th house is temples, right? Palace could be about, you know, potentially, you know, a lifetime dating back to like ancient Athens. I mean, literally, where you were somebody who was, you know, doing rituals and giving, you know, offerings to deities and goddesses in ancient form. Neptune and Uranus in a earth sign. To me, this also makes me wonder, do you feel like you have connections? And a lot of people do. I'll preface this by saying with the Neptune-Uranus conjunction to like Atlantis. But you know how to do like alchemical work. Moon Pluto is the alchemist. In the 6th house, it's healing, cleansing, exorcisms, detoxing, purging, you know, protection, rituals. So it's not just Mercury. It's Mercury trine Neptune, Uranus. It's the oppositions to your 6th house. Yep. Yeah. You have the exorcist moon, Pluto in Scorpio. But I think that the Mercury trine Uranus specifically, because Uranus represents your career and it's in a sign of Capricorn, and it trines, it's like you may use tarot or astrology or things, but you might just be somebody who just channels stuff. I've had dreams of being in a water planet. Yeah, that's pretty common with the Neptune-Uranus conjunction. That whole 1989 to 1991 people have all of that. And you have some nice mutual reception also, you know, between your Saturn and your Uranus. And it's all in a trine to Mercury. Yeah. I would say, honestly, you know, because your chart ruler is in the 12th house, it's going to have this Neptunian Piscean vibe. And I feel like you energetically can feel when there's like stickies. And so you have to use crystals or herbs to clear some of that stuff off. And the trines to Neptune. So you might make sprays or baths or other things, you know, to kind of clear some of that stuff out. And Mercury also squares the nodes. So it means in this lifetime, you're having to take into consideration your past life talents psychically to better integrate, receive the messages. So you're getting out of past patterns, South Node in the 3rd house, of learning it. You're stepping into teaching it. So eventually you might be teaching this stuff, and it might be after a period of you tapping into your higher self, doing dream work, doing past life regressions, and you might actually end up writing or teaching some of these things that you channel. And the ruler is Venus. Yeah. A lot of us can do that. A lot of us can do that. If you have Mercury, Neptune, Uranus aspects, you can do that. If you have Mercury, Pluto aspects, you can do that. And Mercury obviously sextiles an exalted Jupiter here too. So it's like you got some really cool stuff. Obviously, having all that Scorpio and all that Capricorn is not easy. And you got some fixed squares. But your Mercury, once you learn how to work with it, because it's like I said, it's intercepted, it's quite a powerful placement to have. And Mercury is also the diviner, by the way. Okay, Jupiter is about faith and philosophy, but Mercury is seen as, you know, at the crossroads. He's the one who's interpreting all of the divination. So it's pretty common when you see people who have a strong Mercury signature that they're reading cards, they're looking at dice, they're reading shells, they look at tarot cards. But it's almost like you feel like you need physical things to confirm and clarify the things you already know. So you can use that, but that might just be for confirmation. So you might get to a point where you're like, I kind of feel like this is going to happen. And like, you're not relying totally on the cards, but you'll pull one card and you're like, okay, that's fine. Because you're not here to totally fully rely on the physical cards themselves or whatever. You're here to do more of the channeling work, 12th house. And also it could be mediumship because it trines Neptune and Saturn. And you got that moon Pluto. But I'd be careful with that. Make sure you know what you're doing, because that can impact your energy levels. It is, but your Uranus aspect with the opposition to Jupiter Chiron and the quincunx to your ascendant is not easy. And that can definitely affect your energy levels and your mental stuff, right? And Mercury trine Uranus, that's great, but there's other stuff going on where your Uranus is in some uncomfortable angles with some other things that are going on. It's also kind of slightly in a square to your sun. So that's the thing, is the lesson with Mercury in the 12th house is not to be fully reliant on the tools themselves, right? It's using them as a guide, but not, it's like you're not going to sit there and assess each card in a spread. You're going to be like, okay, there's my confirmation, and then you say what you need to say. Which can be hard because Mercury in Taurus is like, make it make sense. I need physical proof, right? I could definitely see that with some of the aspects that you have going on. Because Uranus is still kind of slightly in an opposition to your moon. That's wearing off, though. And eclipses on your sun. So there's going to be a lot of joining with other people and possibly being able to do more of this work with others. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing your chart with us, Frank. I appreciate it. We've got Vani, and then Amy, and then Kimberly. We got another 1990. Let's see, where is this? There we go. There's a couple of us here tonight. Okay, so Vani says, oh, this is for London. Hold on a second. I think I actually have that. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the name. This is for London. 3/31/1990, Birmingham. My inquiry is, I just recently have been dealt an array of online slander, defamation, and huge economic loss that hit my business recently. Ooh, this involves a roommate that I was living with, that I had a miscommunication with. I decided to take her private business and share it with the community we're a part of. It's done a lot of damage to my finances and health, and on top of that, left me without warning while I was out of town, which is a breach of our lease. I spoke with a lawyer today, and he agreed we can pursue this legally. I was wondering if there's anything you see in my chart that can speak to how it may turn out. Okay. Well, ooh. So are you looking to go after them because they're breaking the lease and you're wanting them to pay the difference? Or are you going after them because of issues with defamation? Or both, I guess. Here's the deal. Two things. One is Venus is your chart ruler and Venus is retrograde. And she's retrograde in your 10th house of career. So when Venus turns retrograde, it changes something in regards to maybe, in this case, career or your status. It can be issues with a woman. And it's on your South Node, which represents some kind of potential loss happening with work, public reputation. Venus is squaring Jupiter and Uranus, which is issues in regards to how other people can affect your finances and your resources. And it's in an opposition to all of your planets in Aquarius, which is pretty much more or less kind of in your 4th house. So it's like, I'm not going to say it was meant to happen, but the astrology makes sense that even while Venus is finally retrograding and coming to an end, she's revealing, hey, you know, I'm going to create some of these issues for you and get you out of this potential relationship where you're living with someone or you're friends with someone. And yeah, it's going to affect your reputation. But the square to Jupiter and Uranus could be that down the road, it could potentially be something that there is something that you recoup because of the losses. 2, you had an eclipse in your 7th house, so this can be the effects of that coming out, where you're realizing that there are some people that you have to fight with. And you've got your 7th house Lord Mars in the late degrees of your 12th house. So something is wrapping up. And then a Mercury retrograde. Yeah, it's a lot right now. Lawsuits are going to more stem from your 9th house and also Mars. And so Mars is in a trine to Pluto and your natal Saturn. So you're like, I will fight. Mars is also getting ready to cross your ascendant. So it's like, I will fight. And Mars is going to be in a trine with your moon. So it's about fighting for your reputation, working with a lawyer, could be a female lawyer, I don't know. And you're going to have Mars coming into your 1st house opposed Mercury, which could represent serving somebody. So it makes sense to me. Something I would take into consideration is Venus is still, even when she goes direct next month, going to square Jupiter and Uranus. So it's like taking a risk, investing into something, unless you have an attorney that's taking this pro bono or, you know, contingent on you getting a settlement. There's no guarantee that the things that you decide to end right now are going to pay off. So you really want to make sure that this attorney is confident that's like, yes, we could potentially sue and it's going to pay off. I also want you to like chill when Mars is crossing your ascendant, because it's going to oppose your sun and cross your ascendant, which means you're going to get really feisty. This is going to be from about September 14th until about the 25th. And then you're going to have a solar eclipse on your ascendant with Mars still in your 1st house. So you're fighting, right? And it's like, you know, basically bringing up all of this stuff, and you need to be prepared that other people are going to fight too. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be something that's going to be easy. Friends are more the sun. And so you're having the North Node coming into conjunction with your sun. So let this be a lesson to you that whether it's a roommate or a friend for the next year or so, you may have some things you have to kind of settle with friends. The Venus retrograde was meant to bring this out as well. I think that it would be better that you're making a decision when some of these planets are in better aspect. So to me, it kind of seems like if you really want to do this, you want to make sure that you feel confident that it's going to be worth your time and your energy, and that financially you're going to have support from that attorney. Like if, you know, if they're taking you on saying we'll sue them and then I'll take a percentage and you want to do that, that's fine. But I'm not wild currently about Venus coming into a square with Uranus, because it does make me feel like it could cost you. And you're also going to see Mars. Mars is right now in an opposition to Neptune. It's like, that's not a time where you start a lawsuit. Not right now. I would advise you to wait until Sun and Mercury cazimi and see if there is a resolution. This will be right around the 4th. If there's no resolution, or maybe there's more information that comes out, then you can make the decision when Mars is still coming into a trine with your moon, right around mid-September, to move forward with that if that's what you want to do. Likely more information is going to come out. The cazimi in your whole sign 12th house, but in your Placidus 11th, tells me there's going to be more information that's going to come up from another party or an outside source relating to some of this stuff. So there will be more possibly he said, she said things that are going to take place. The moon is what rules your 10th house, and Mars is in a square, so you're feeling secretly attacked when it comes to your public reputation. You're going to see next year Saturn is going to start squaring your moon. So this will be about being very careful about who you live with. Saturn rules your 4th house and the impact that it has on your career and also your health. So you may be finding that you're a little bit more selective with roommates or potentially people who you're working with as you're going into this next year. Yeah, if you want to do that, you can do that. And I would say mid-September is a better time to make that decision when you do it. And then likely you'll see mid-October, if you move forward with the lawsuit, I would assume with Mars on your ascendant and the eclipse in opposition to Mercury, you're serving someone or somebody's finding out that you're challenging them to a legal separation. And that eclipse at 21 degrees is going to oppose your Mercury. It's going to square your Saturn. And it's literally going to be a challenge with another person about something they said, Mercury in the 7th, and also something that happened at home. Right? Yeah, no roommates right now. You have North Node Mars in your 4th house. So part of what's going on also is that Jupiter is squaring that. So it's bringing up some kind of expenses pertaining to people who you've lived with. And I think that, you know, with Mars coming into a trine with your moon, that's a really good time if you have to initiate a lawsuit to do that. And that would be, like I said, mid-September. Good luck. It looks like you're going to have to fight one way or another. North Node's coming in conjunction with Mercury in Aries, so it's going to be hard for you to simmer. And you're also going to be having the North Node coming into a conjunction with your Sun, where you're just, if you have to hash stuff out with people, you're going to hash stuff out with people. That's what's going to happen. A lot of Libra risings are dealing with this right now. It's not fun. You know, the North Node in the 7th it can be about relationships, but it can be about conflict, Aries, right? And Aries is the self. So a lot of Libras are having to have conflict with other people to be able to kind of like assert themselves more. Oh, well, there you go. Money owed is 8th house. So the Venus retrograde square can be you proving we had a tiff, this stuff happened, and they're stiffing me with the bill, and this is what they owe me. And likely when you start seeing the full moon eclipse in Taurus, that'll be the end of October, that can bring stuff revolving around a settlement or a payment. Good luck. That sounds like a nightmare, but at least they're out of your house, you know? So I've got Amy, and then Kimberly. Thank you guys for your patience. So Amy, I've got you here. November 19th, 1970. My question is about tying up old karmic contracts and bringing new love in. Okay. Tying up karmic contracts. I was going to say, where's your Libra planets at? There they are. Oh, how are you doing with Mars in conjunction to Pluto? This is a good time to be like, I'm burying all this stuff. It's time to let this stuff go. So, karmic contract, South Node stuff, right? So the South Node is in Leo. You've had Venus retrograding there. So it's about what you're mentally willing to let go of, saying goodbye to people, getting rid of old love letters, clearing out text messages, unfriending people, third house stuff. Venus will come back to that in early October. And that can be about finally like releasing something and letting it go. But this is like a lot of like releasing. South Node Sun, Mars conjunct Pluto, South Node coming into conjunction with Mars. It's like everything is getting cleared out, I think it's a theme. I think you're going to be dealing with this for a little while, to be honest with you. I think of like September and October is going to be a period of that with eclipses in the South Node in the 5th where you're clearing the heart out. I also see that you're going to be having retrogrades in the 7th, which is going to be about clearing out issues with people. I kind of get the impression also that part of Mars coming into the 5th house is going to be challenges revolving around love life, relationships, children, and that's going to start coming into a square with Pluto in the 8th. So I don't know what exactly it is that you're clearing out. Man, the South Node on your Leo is like how you're communicating or expressing how you feel, right? Now, personally, I would be looking at when Venus comes into conjunction with the South Node. It's going to be the beginning of October. Sorry, this is slow. Here we go. So yeah, the beginning of October. And that's when it's completing what's been all about this Venus retrograde release point. And Venus is about unfinished business, 12th house, relationships and matters of the heart, 5th house. And so there's something that's like almost completing right around mid-October. Let's say like the 6th through the 16th, because that's happening. Sun-Mars conjunction is happening. South Node Mars is happening. And then you're going to have an eclipse. So likely this is when you're feeling like that phase is clearing. And what's interesting is like a new moon, solar eclipse, trine your ascendant. Right. Dance, move around. Like this is all air trine. So you need a lot of movement or like learning or like breaking free in some way. And that solar eclipse is also going to trine your North Node. So something really magical about that eclipse and self-love and creativity and being more open to what else can come in that can bring you happiness is all going to kind of get ignited with that solar eclipse. But this almost feels like the clearing out the next 6 weeks before you get to that point, right? Oh, child support issues. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize that was you. So in that case, yeah, so you're looking at Pluto in the 8th house, which is money owed. Transits going into your 5th house of children, putting pressure on the 8th house. So clearing something up, tying something up. So money owed is Saturn, and you've got Saturn going across the midheaven. So you're needing to legally maybe go through the process of being able to recoup some of that or feeling like you're on top of being able to get what you need. And the money that you bring in is going to be the moon. So probably what I'm imagining then, when Venus goes direct, there might be something interesting revolving around what you're receiving in terms of getting some kind of support in regards to children. So September 12th through the 20th, right? So perhaps something's going to be happening right around there. And you're going to have your Mars return. Wow, that's pretty good for like being able to kind of rev up the things that you need in regards to kids. But you know, a lot of Scorpios with the Uranus opposition, there's a lot of stickiness back and forth with relationships with other people. Taurus can be about money and financial related things. And to me, it looks like, to be honest with you, the more that Saturn is getting into your 10th house, the more you're feeling empowered and being like, I feel like I'm on top of it, right? And you're going to see Saturn that's going to be trining stuff. So it's also going to make your daily routine a lot easier, or bring in the necessary support that you need to take care of children or home or health related things, you know, helping you take care of family. You'll have another wave of this though. You're going to have something in Mercury when Mercury goes retrograde. So if you're just starting this process out, you could be doing it during this, and you might be finding that it's getting completed and it's starting to kind of pay off, and you're seeing a rebalance of the finances at the end of the year. I also feel like with some of the transits that you've got going on, you know, 10th house wise, you're mentioning, you know, contracts and advertising. This is big changes in regards to the future of your status at work. Saturn's going to spend several years in your 10th house, but it's going in and out right now. So as it comes back in the new year, that's also going to be all next year, Saturn trine Jupiter. So you're going to feel like you're being more productive, and you've got more work that's actually kind of getting situated out in the world. That's paying off, right? But for me, when I look at like all your planets in the 6th house, it's a lot of the sacrifice and what you give to other people, what you do. And so you're going through a period of being like, I need help too. It's not just about like, you know, what's owed to you. It's about like what those resources could do that you get from clients, or that you get from, you know, child support, that's allowing you to not have to carry all of the weight, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Amy. But definitely I feel like you're in this until about the better part of mid-October, and then that clearing is done. Last but not least, we have Kimberly. Let's see. You're welcome. Where is this? Kimberly. There you go. And then the second chart was for Gary. Okay. How, when do energy ties end? Alimony and legal issues continue. So we don't know his birth time. We just know that you're Pisces rising, Moon in Scorpio, Sun in Leo. So looks to me like you're going through Venus retrograde over your natal Venus Uranus. I don't know if this is your first marriage or what, but I'm going to say I'm not quite so surprised with Venus and Uranus in your 6th house natally that this is happening. The Venus retrograde has been really challenging because it's been going through your natal Venus, and it's been in a square to Jupiter and Uranus and Mars in your 2nd. So it looks like going back and forth about money, possessions, values, resources, who gets what, how you settle all that stuff out. You're going to be having a solar eclipse here in mid-October and a Mercury retrograde. So you're still in this for the next month and a half, at least. Saturn's also getting ready to cross your ascendant. So you're definitely, come the turn of the year, you're separated. And when I look at his transits, let's see, so Gemini rising, the retrograde has been primarily in the 3rd house. So is somebody needing to move? Have you guys been going back and forth about moving? Or a vehicle? Has that been coming up? Or about who's going to go where? Because the retrograde's in his 3rd house. It looks like based off of his chart, there isn't like a definitive legal separation. Like it's not becoming more like legal until the end of the year, when Mercury retrogrades conjunct Mars in his 7th. But right now, between a Venus retrograde in his 3rd and a Mercury retrograde in his 4th, I'm wondering, is there a standoff revolving around like who gets a house or who's moving out or who's going to pay who to be able to cover cost of living? That seems to be a big theme in this chart right now. Yeah, people tend to separate around 3.5, 7, 14. Saturn squares. So, for me, in terms of like endings, it's looking like right around the end of the year after the home resource situation is settled this fall. Yeah, of course he wants the house. Are you kidding me? Look at his North Node, Moon, Pluto in the 4th. He's not going to want to give that up. Just to be honest with you. And he's got a lot of planets in Capricorn in his 8th house. So that's part of it. Look at this. So you guys have a Taurus rising, Sun in Taurus, and Moon in Libra, ruled by Venus, and Venus is retrograde in this chart over Uranus. So what's going on is that you guys are both going back and forth about who bought what, who owns what, who's going to give who what. And until Venus crosses Uranus direct and squares Uranus, it looks like a turning point is at the end of September going into October. Then you're going to have this solar eclipse, which is defining the actual like legal separation ending around mid-October. Living in different places or having a different living situation by Halloween. And I feel like, yeah, it's gonna legally take until the better part of the end of the year, right? But Sun and Mercury square Uranus, you guys, the way that you guys communicate and talk about resources and home seems like it's under stress right now. Not because you're going through a separation, it's because of this square. And it's going to be hard looking at his transits to get him to get out of the house. And it looks like if this drags on, even if, you're willing to give up the house, there's going to be something going on where something is still needing to be settled at the end of the year, because 8th house represents other people's resources. So there's going to be a Mercury retrograde and Mars and Venus going in. So it looks like if you drag this out, there is still going to be something happening revolving around what he has to part with or what he has to give up the end of December through January. So he may have to give part of his savings, part of a retirement, something revolving around insurance, something like that can still be coming up at the end of the year, right? But yeah, I would say basically if you're not willing to give up the house, be prepared for the next 2 months, because it's going to be a little bit of like a little bit of a battle. Pluto, North Node, Moon, he's not going to want to give that up. He is not. And Mars being on the North Node is him kind of being like needing to fight for it. But come the turn of the year, yeah, I do see this being a different situation, especially for you. I think Saturn on your ascendant is going to be you being on your own. And you will probably be looking at the actual legal separation definitively taking place around the end of December. And alimony, if you've been divorced since 2018. Well, then the Venus retrograde that happened the end of last year and the Mercury retrograde that's supposed to be happening this year is supposed to be finally settling it. So if there's something that's owed to you, then that looks like that's getting ready to be paid when Mars goes through the Capricorn transits. Yeah, but it's the full moon lunar eclipse on your ascendant that's wrapping this up. That's gonna be around the end of October. But the house is gonna be hard to get out from underneath for whatever reason because of that north node, because Saturn is gonna be sitting in opposition to his Pluto. He's not gonna wanna give it up. Unless he's told that he has to, he's not gonna wanna give that up, unfortunately. Pluto trine his moon. Yeah, I mean, I think that if this drags out any longer, you stand a better chance of being able to wrap up the alimony stuff at the end of the year. Let's see, make sure I'm not missing anyone. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, please give me a thumbs up. And to give up his home. Thank you, Anne. Okay, yeah, I think that was all of them. All right, well, I'm pretty sure we did not miss anybody. If anybody comes back and sees this, let me know. We'll be back here on Sunday. We're going to be doing the astro weather. We're going to talk all about Uranus going retrograde. Thank you guys so much for spending your Friday with me. I appreciate it. Make sure that you click the button below and you're subscribed to the channel. Don't hesitate to check out my website too. We've got a webinar that's going to be coming up for eclipses next month. We've got all kinds of stuff on there, and you can also book a one-on-one with me. So check out my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for your support, your likes, your comments, and your shares. We'll be back here next week doing tarot, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.